24. We are meeting in the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. Our meeting will be broadcast live on local cable channels 8 and 1072, as well as being streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website. Before we begin, if you would like to stand and join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we start, I'd like to take a moment of silence. Perhaps you would like to remember those people in Malibu, California that are suffering from the forest fires and wildfires that are taking place. Thank you. So we are going to reconvene now at this meeting in open session. I hope so. My light is on.
Can't hear it.
How's that, better? We'll do our best. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome, we have a couple of new members that have joined the Conservation Commission, Shauna and Neil. Welcome aboard. Nice to have you here. They're associate members. Good to have people at the table. Thank you. Okay. First thing I'm going to take is the, under discussion, the wastewater phase 2 update of the lift station locations. Jared Meter is here, and I believe Bob Drake. So if you'd like to come up and tell us what you have for us. And I did see the slides that you sent along. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Once again, my name is Bob Drake with GHD. And just to clarify, we're not here to talk about the pump stations. We're here to talk about tonight the linear portion of the job, the installation of the actual sewers that will flow into the pump stations.
Okay.
Okay. As I just mentioned, we're here to discuss the Town of Mashpee Sewer Collection System, Phase 2, give you guys an update of where we stand, some of the proposed remedies that we're going to try to mitigate to lessen the impacts on the environment. If you could pull up our slides, if you would.
Okay.
If you could, Dan.
I don't think I got those slides. That's the thing.
Okay. If
Yeah.
not, I can just.
If you can talk, and I'll see what I can
Yep.
pull up.
Well, the proposed work consists of 4 separate contracts totaling a grand total of approximately 100,000 linear feet of sewer pipe. 2 of the contracts will be to the south of Town Hall. The other 2 will be obviously to the north of Town Hall. The furthest contract to the south will be out by Pirates Cove area, Captain's Row. That area is going to consist of installation of all low-pressure sewer mains. The sewer mains will be installed within the roadway right-of-way and approximately 6 feet below the surface. Just to the area to the north of that will be our second contract, and give you some street boundaries. To the west will be Mashpee Neck. To the south will be Frogs Pond Close. And to the north and east will be Simon Narrows. And that's going to be a combination of low-pressure sewer and gravity sewer mains. Once again, all sewer pipes will be installed in the roadway right-of-way. Low pressure will be, once again, about 6 feet below the surface. And most of the sewer in this area will only be down approximately 8 to 12 feet below the surface, just to give you some ideas. Contract number 3, which is basically around Town Hall and just to the north. It starts just south of Town Hall on Great Neck Road to Ashes Path, and it runs to Main Street and up along South Sandwich Road, okay, that area. This contract will be mostly gravity, with a small portion on the northern part of the project area will be a little low pressure. And the last contract, contract 4, will be bounded by Situate Pond on the east side. To the west will be Katuitt Road and Timberland Drive, just to give you an idea where the projects are. So we have been in contact with Drew and Dan during preliminary stages of the design of these contracts to help mitigate or lessen the impact of the construction to the environment. The environment meaning 100-year flood zone areas, wetland areas, and if we are in groundwater, how are we gonna dewater the trenches, which shouldn't be a major issue, or there should be minor impacts on that. Once the designs get a little bit further along in design, we'll set up meetings with Drew and Dan again to go over, to finalize how we're gonna really mitigate the potential impacts to the environment. And the ways that we're gonna implement, I'm gonna turn that over to Eric, and he can describe some of those methods that we're proposing.
Sure. Hello, all. So during the, the construction phase, as Bob mentioned, if we do have dewatering, we plan on kind of lining our limit of work with silt socks to control any kind of, construction runoff that may occur in addition to our groundwater discharges, and utilize existing drainage infrastructure to collect that groundwater discharge. Inside of those existing catch basins, we're going to put silt sacks, so we're going to protect those inlets. Once the method of dewatering is chosen, whether it's a well point system or whatever else is chosen, the initial discharge will, go through a filter bag prior to entering the catch basins. If there isn't any, drainage infrastructure present, we plan on discharging it to a low-lying area and surrounding that area with hay bales and containing it where it can infiltrate naturally. So that's how we plan on kind of, mitigating those impacts from any of that groundwater discharge or construction phase runoff.
That's good, good. Yeah, well, a couple of the areas that may impact, which we have are within the 100-year flood zone, and we're next to water and wetlands areas, is down in the lower portion of Mashpee Neck, which is just south of Frogs Pond Close. That's where the boat launches, and they're doing some construction work down there. That most of that lower area is within the 100-year flood zone. So in a case like that, and even some of the side streets will probably line either the silt socks, or I call them, I'm old-fashioned, straw wattles, the old term for it. And you see that a lot during construction. They actually look like a sock with straw inside, and what that does is, during construction, it helps prevent the sediment from running down into the yards or the woods or the water. So we'll be doing that. And as Eric said, in some of the areas, higher elevation areas, if we're going to be dewatering, the way that we do dewater is typically, I don't see any major dewatering. Groundwater is about 5 feet, 5.5 feet below the surface out in the Pirates Cove area. Even in that low-lying area, we did a bunch of groundwater soil boring wells out there this past summer. We we performed over 300 throughout the project area. And so we have a good idea of where the groundwater is. And here we go. Here's the slides. So why don't you jump to slide number 5 will be the straw wattles. This is a typical straw wattle. And it's just showing it's a sock. It's a cut-through section of it. It shows a sock with a stake in so it doesn't move, so it doesn't get hit by a car or anything. And you can see the arrow showing the runoff. That silk sock will then prevent the migration of any soil fines that come up during the construction of the trench hole, when the contractor's digging, it'll prevent that from running into the wetlands or the water or surrounding environment.
What are the dimensions of that?
The silt sock, I would say it's about 12 inch, about a foot high, maybe not even, about a foot high. Oh, look at-
A foot high and,
About a foot wide. It's circular,
okay.
Audrey, so it's about
I'm
it's
trying
about
to
a foot.
imagine it.
You've seen them.
I
Okay?
have seen them,
guarantee you've seen
yeah.
them.
They're not attractive.
No,
But they do a good job, though, and it's,
That's not what they're for.
and what's nice about
You
the
could
silt.
say that about a lot of things.
Pretty is as pretty does.
Exactly. And the nice thing, the reason why they have gone to the straw wattles or the silt sock is because it's seedless, where hay does have potentially seeds in it and it could spread. So that's the reason why they've gone to, I say, this type of barrier for, you probably know better than me, Dan, last 10, 15 years, I think. Before that, you used to do the old hay bales, and they were a mess. One rainstorm, they'd be all over the place, and we'd be cleaning up all the time, so. If you go to the next slide, please. These are the silt sacks that are installed in the catch basin, and they basically perform the same thing. It's like almost like a filter fabric that just slides nicely into the catch basin. So when the rainwater comes down the road, gets into the grate, all the fines are captured by the filter fabric. So once again, prevents the fines from migrating out into the environment.
And I will add too that in that detail there's an overflow, so we don't resuspend anything and send it further downstream. You can see it, it's a very small triangle there. So in the event of a large rainstorm,
Oh.
there's that added measure.
How do you clean that?
You just pull it right up.
You pull it up?
Yep.
Give it a good wash and then see you later? That's it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Seriously, yeah. Yeah, they do. And, you know, I always recommend if we know there's a good storm coming, having the contractor to go out there. Because, you know, he's working in an isolated area. He's not like working all over town. He doesn't have 100 of these out. He has a certain area where he's working. So if there's a good storm coming, we make sure that these are all nice and clean, especially in the fall, from leaves and everything else can get trapped and actually prevent the water from going into it.
Yeah,
So you want to clean them out, and it's very easy. It takes 5 minutes to clean them.
cool.
Want to talk about this?
This was kind of what I was mentioning before, you know, so that'd be, you know, a typical, you know, cross-section of you know, a well point system. So if we had to do any dewatering, that would, you know, in general be what it would look like, and that's the filter bag that discharge would go through prior to it entering any kind of drainage infrastructure. So that's, you know, that's what that would look like typically. And this is the detail. If there's not drainage structure, infrastructure present, so if there aren't any catch basins, you know, in the vicinity that we can discharge to, this is kind of how we would contain any runoff or dewatering, you know, prior to it entering the river or a wetland or coastal bank or whatever kind of resource area is present. We would contain it within this kind of structure and let it naturally infiltrate.
And these are just some of the methods that we're going to be using or proposing to use. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, when the design gets a little bit further along, we'll be sitting down with Dan and Drew and going over, you know, specific areas and which method may be more appropriate than another one in those areas.
You're gonna need a ton of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's,
What's your
we
guess?
got a lot of waterways and wetlands in Mashpee, so. So it's going to be, yeah, a substantial amount. Those are just the areas,
These were the phases, I believe.
right?
Could you go back to, yeah, that one there.
Okay,
Can you pull that out a little bit, Dan?
okay, these are the areas to the north here, and if you see that big tan area, anything to the left, right in the middle of the page is contract, is the third contract, all the brown area, town hall, The the lowest road right there, that's Route 130, and that's Town Hall, right where the cursor is right now. So to give you an idea of the limits of work. Situate Pond is the pond over to the right. So that's our fourth contract, up by Timberland Drive, and Town Landing is that little peninsula that's sticking out right there. So we'll be back in front of you probably next month to discuss that pump station that we discussed earlier in the summer about putting it there. We've done some soil borings out there in that area that we went in front of you and proposed, and you granted us permission to do that work and so forth. So now we're working with Dan and Drew, and also Ashley and the town, because you're proposing right across from Town Landing, you're proposing that new parking lot. So we're working in conjunction with you folks on that. You're gonna have you're gonna have a swale in that area, so we're working around that. So we're all in good communications.
And what's the timing of contract 1, 2, 3, 4?
Well, we're planning on bidding these in the spring of
Yeah.
2025.
Okay,
And if all goes well, which we expect, we're planning on starting to break ground in the fall of 2025, after Labor Day. And depending on the restrictions, the two southern contracts are a little bit smaller, so we're looking at about a 2-year construction period. Of course, a lot of that depends on the weather during the winter time. If we have a good, mild winter like we've had the last 2 or 3 winters, we can, make up ground and so forth. These two to the north are a little bit more complicated. They're a little bit larger, so we're expecting about 2.5 year construction period on these two contracts. And that's to the south, that's contract number 2, and the out there by the peninsula, that's Pirates Cove area, highlighted with all the blue pipe indicating low-pressure shore.
How many homes?
The 188, that's just in the first contract, that's about that, it's a little bit less than that, yeah, but, yeah. Over 1,200? 1,288 approximately. Okay. Thank you. But, all contracts, we had a good meeting, Jared, myself, and a couple of the other players that are gonna be involved in these contracts with, the big thing will be obviously coordination and how to minimize the impact to the environment as far as concerns and things like that.
Any other questions?
I've got a question.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
if that's okay. Hi, Bob. Hi, Jared. 2.5 years is an awful lot of stormwater. I was just driving around this week after this big rainstorm we had, and there were a lot of places in these mapped zones where stormwater management is pretty insufficient. There was a lot of pooling and flooding in the roadway. How is the system going to interact with the existing stormwater management that seems to be insufficient and needing upgrades as well?
Right, well, our portion of the work is for the sewer installation only, but we are in communications with the director about installing in key locations, especially in the Pirates Cove area. There's a lot of flooding going on there, we all know that. Installing some leaching basins and so forth. And there's some other key areas that she's been discussing with also.
I see. And that's Director Fisher, the Natural Resources here in town?
Catherine, right?
Catherine. Okay. And so the dewatering efforts, those are predominantly for the groundwater, since you're putting a lot of this pipe right into the groundwater table, right?
In some
It's not for the
locations, in some
stormwater.
locations, yes. And,
Okay.
for the most part, we're gonna be above the groundwater table, but some of these low-lying areas, we may be, 6 inches in and so forth, so, that's easily dewatered with the diagram that we show with just a regular, what they call a dredge pump, a suck pump and stuff like that, and then controlling the flows from that. You gotta remember, it's like, the whole area isn't open up, it's just you moving along usually in about 100-foot stretches, so it's a controlled environment.
Sure. Thank you.
But the dewatering only happens when you're laying
The
the
pipe.
pipe, right?
right.
And once you cover everything
Once
back
we
up
put it
again
in-
to regular, right?
That's correct. It's just for that moment of time that you're installing the pipe. As soon as they start back filling, they pull the pump out and everything goes back to normal.
One more question, actually, just thought of it. So are we, when we're doing this in the roadways, the right-of-ways, is there any thought or consideration to semi-pervious pavement to replace the asphalt that's being picked up, just in terms of stormwater and
Most,
general water management?
most of the roadways will be in some form either rehabilitated or mill and overlaid after we're done, or a full depth reconstruction.
Okay, so we're just gonna put the materials back and
Back,
put
right.
another layer over?
Right.
Okay,
Some of the impervious materials that you're talking about, roadways, they probably would not be as effective here. They have
It's a lot of erosion.
extremely high maintenance to them. I mean,
Sure.
like, you see that a lot of times around like a beach area, stuff like that, but they have to be cleaned and swept almost daily.
wow.
Keep the fines from getting in and clogging up that, pervious material.
Yeah, and extremely, when it does get extremely warm, those pores, once you do, when it heats up to a certain temperature and you turn on it, if a big truck drives over it or anything and those pores close up, now you have failures. They're, like Bob was alluding to, they're very high maintenance, and an application on that scale, probably wouldn't be the most efficient thing to do.
Sure. Is there any thought or concern that the disturbance to the existing pavement with the need for better stormwater drainage infrastructure could create a situation where the roads could wash out for some of these large storm events, whereas now they're intact? I'm tapping in someone else. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to.
This is the,
Yeah, so we have been in contact with Catherine throughout this whole process. One of the things we don't want to do is open up the roads and then have to open them up again to fix the drainage. A lot of the homeowners associations have reached out expressing concerns that they'd like to have their drainage done. They just couldn't afford it. So we are looking road by road, area by area, and whether or not we're going to do a road taking initiated by the select board as opposed to petitioner. And we'll make those decisions as Catherine's evaluating every one of the drainages, but the intent is to either rehab, install new, and then bring the roads up to standard. So we're just trying to, and we want to keep it in line with our projects. We're not doing everything twice.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm done. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. We're all set? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much
it.
for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. Okay. Okay, I'm going to call the hearing for 42 Sandy Way, Charles E. and Michelle C. Torgy. This is a proposed septic system upgrade. Representative is GeoCape Environmental Consultants, and it is a request for determination of applicability. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Okay.
Glenn Harrington, representing the property and the owners who are here tonight. This is for a proposed septic upgrade for the dwelling at 42 Sandy Way. It's an existing three-bedroom dwelling at the cul-de-sac at the end of the street. The system is currently failed. The existing system that is there is a 1,500-gallon tank and a short leaching trench to the left of the dwelling. The proposed septic system is a 1,500-gallon microfast .5 treatment tank with an ultraviolet disinfection unit and two H20 distribution box and 19 plastic chambers. There is a 5-foot overdig that will be done to remove soil around the system and also remove the existing system for the installation of the new leaching facility. The Red Brook borders the property to the north and west. There is an associated wetland. With that, a border vegetated wetland also with AE 10 flood zone. That comes up to the bank in the back of the property. And there is a coastal bank because their floodwater comes up to the back of the property along the bank. I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to commissioners first for questions or comments you might have.
All right, Glenn, a couple quick questions. Where the dig out is going to be right at the top of the coastal bank, I'm not seeing anything on the plan for erosion control there.
There is erosion control. It's a dark line that is outside of where the test pit symbol is. That goes along the back of the...
Okay.
So there will be erosion control provided.
Okay, great, thank you, I missed that. And then these degraded retaining walls. I was reading in your narrative about they may need to be replaced, but I'm trying to think, how is the excavator going to get in there without?
That's
removing
really
those
the only
walls?
access to this side. The plumbing comes out underneath the footing, so it can't really be rerouted to any other side of the property. So those walls are pretty in poor condition, retaining walls right now. They're wood tie walls, and they're gonna have to be removed to get access to get down there.
Okay,
It's
so
about
is
an
there,
8-foot drop from the left of the driveway down to where the tank sits.
okay, so is there a plan to replace those walls?
There is a plan. They are gonna be replaced. I believe they left it up to the contractor as far as what is gonna be put back as they back out of the, off the property.
Okay, so how come it wasn't put in this plan if they had to be replaced?
They don't know what they're gonna put there yet, so I guess that's the reason why it wasn't.
This should be go hand in hand. This should have been, if you're engineering the septic system, why, the wall should be engineered at the same time to be on the plan to gain this board's approval.
So we can certainly do that.
Yeah.
There's gonna have to be something put there, because it's such a steep drop. I just
Right, yeah, I
don't know
can see that.
exactly what's gonna be there.
But, yeah, but, no, I just think it should have been considered with this whole application. So,
I agree with that. So, Glenn, the protocol would have been to go in and take these walls down first.
They are gonna have to come down for access to put the system in.
And there's a good-sized oak tree that's right there in one of those walls, pretty much.
Okay?
So that's out, right, as well?
If there's any vegetation in those walls, it's
Yeah.
gonna come out.
Yeah. I think it's a stretch to call this an RDA. I don't see this as a minor repair job. I mean, if it was a wide-open area that you could get in and lift a tank out and put a new tank back in and not deal with all of these other incidentals, which really aren't incidentals,
Right.
I'm having a hard time seeing this as a negative determination.
Okay.
But I'll listen to what other commissioners have to say as well.
Hi, Glenn. I would agree. I was concerned just about the number of variances requested on the plan itself. It seemed like this is a highly sensitive area. This is going to be a very intrusive project. I would like to see this as a full application. So I would have a hard time passing this through to say that it's not applicable.
Right.
So,
I know the system's in trouble, and just
sure.
try to do everything we can to get something in there as fast as possible, but I understand it's not an easy project, for sure. This is not a quick in and out type of upgrade, for sure. But the system has been in failure for quite a while, so.
Yeah.
Has there been any consideration to any alternate waste solutions? I have something from the Department of Environmental Protection. It's dated 2005, and it's only about 5 pages long, but it talks about gray water systems and composting toilets. Is that something, given the topography of the slope and some of the restrictions, that could be considered by the applicant as an alternative to a Title V system?
So is just doing a great compost toilet with a gray water system? Where there's good soil there, we really wouldn't consider that because there is some area to be used. Where the fast system is provided, they're getting additional treatment because of the fast system. And there's also already a 40% reduction taken, so they can't really take more of a reduction. A fast would allow a 50%, so they wouldn't get that much more of reduction in size. So have kept the leaching as small as possible.
Sure.
And with the additional treatment from the fast system and the ultraviolet disinfection unit, it's really going to get the best effluent that it's going to see. Granted, a composting toilet would be great for removal of nitrogen, but there would still have to be some kind of leaching put out for the gray water. So, which would still have to be at least a minimum 3-bedroom size for the gray water.
I see.
So you still have to have some kind of leaching in the ground.
Sure. I see.
Yeah.
And again, the plumbing comes out this side and it's underneath the footing, so there's really,
Then to do.
if there were a way to get it to the other side of the property where there was more room, we would have done that.
Yeah.
Could you put the SAS out underneath the driveway in the front yard where it's less grade and, and the plumbing comes out, you're not showing the pipe coming out, but it's coming out underneath those retaining walls into where the tank area is?
I think it comes out just beyond where the retaining walls are and angles back into the tank.
Could you,
But it's all exposed there because it's a walkout on the backside. So,
okay. All
again,
right.
if we have to put a
So then
pump
you'd be
chamber in
pumping
there to
up,
pump
yeah.
it to the front
Pump it
yard,
up.
we're still tearing the walls down and putting a tank and a pump chamber in.
Okay.
So, it's a tough situation all around.
Okay.
So Steve, what would you like to see as a motion?
I just, well,
Well,
looks like a NOI to
Yeah,
show all the new walls on it, unless we can say, come back with a revised plan and keep it as a RDA.
well, it seems like the most direct route would be the NOI. And listen, I'm sorry? Oh. Sorry. I'm used to people telling me to be quiet, not to be louder. But it would seem to me that would make better sense, both for, this is such an odd project, that if you made a motion to have them come back with an NOI and all of the information that's missing, not there, that would be a cleaner application of the Conservation Commission's oversight, wouldn't it?
If
I don't know how you could do it any other way.
If it were possible to have us come back with the retaining wall design and answer that question, would it be possible to leave it as an RDA, knowing what systems and what wall is going to be done there?
I believe that if it were to remain an RDA, it's going to require some conditioning. And typically, we don't condition RDAs.
Right, right.
I don't know. I understand the dilemma. The quicker you can get this system back online,
Right.
better. But I also understand the complicated situation that we have. On paper, it doesn't look anywhere near as bad as it does when you get out on the site.
Right.
I was there today,
Yeah.
and I thought, wow, this is a tough project.
Yeah.
I think to continue down the road of an RDA, I think you're still going to run into a lot of conditioning here. I'll be curious to listen to the agents and how they feed into this. Once the commissioners are done with their questions and concerns, I'll go to the agents and listen to what they have, and the public as well. And then we'll come back before there's any kind of a motion, and we'll see where we go with it.
Yeah.
Unless there's something else, Glenn, that you would like to add.
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? No.
I had one.
Yes, Sandy.
Okay. I noticed there's probably, I think it was like three, I think they're tall pine trees that are right along the edge of, just before the retaining wall.
Yeah,
Are those going to have to come out to get equipment down in there? Or,
that, I'm not 100% sure, because I think those are closer to the property line.
right,
And where they're on the property line, I'm hoping that they do not have to come down, because they're, the line trees always seem to muddle things up with the neighbors. So
right,
if they can work within that, I
right.
would definitely recommend that as well.
I think it would be sort of nice to know what's coming out and what's staying as far
Right.
as
Yeah.
like that also, so maybe an NOI is better. Complete a plan.
Well, I think there's some structural concerns with that driveway as well, that, once you start pulling those walls down and excavating out, I don't know what's gonna hold that up. No other questions from commissioners? Dan or Drew? I'll go to you guys next.
Yeah, I understand the commission's concerns about this coming in as an RDA. Just to explain why we accepted it as an RDA, it was really based on, the urgency of the situation. But now that, these issues have been raised about the retaining wall and kind of uncertainty about the scope of impact overall from an access standpoint and getting equipment in there, I certainly understand the trepidation, but just to, explain the rationale of why we had this come in or didn't dispute this as an RDA is just because it's not an increase in flow or increase in bedrooms. It's really addressing a failed septic system that we kind of wanted to see addressed sooner than later.
Yeah.
But having said that, I certainly understand the concerns.
Yeah. Okay, Dan, is there anything you'd like to add?
I guess my only question when it comes to this, if it's going to remain an RDA or if it's going to be escalated to an NOI, when it comes to the retaining walls itself, could there be a possible layout design? So you can see the walls are angled down. Could there be a way to have them kind of come in? You could still get access down here with machinery. Also, you could have future access for any repairs or anything of that nature. Could that be a possibility for this? Just, basically redesigning the walls all within this as well.
Because of the degree of the drop, I'd say that's going to be a hard thing to do.
Yeah, 'cause
Just because it's such a short distance. Regrading that entire area left of the driveway, I think is a tough thing to do.
tough one. All right.
Because
All
I think that would be relatively tough. So I'd say we can certainly have a wall design done and look at how it's stepped or terraced down
Okay.
too. But we can't really put any fill over the septic tank because it needs access for monitoring and testing.
Okay.
So we can't extend the bank further towards the septic, and cutting it back towards the driveway, I think, brings up more issues with access on the driveway.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, my sentiments are the same as Drew. RDA, the agents looked at it as an RDA because of the issues that are currently going on.
Yep.
But with the commission's hindsight on this, it's going to be up to them for it. So I completely understand their concerns, and yeah.
Sure.
Would it make sense if you did put a pump chamber in to minimize the work back there to, can you, is there any other way that you can route
Bring
the
the
tank?
leach up into the front yard?
Yeah, front yard, and just avoid all that work and issues. If the pipe, you said the pipe that's a garage underneath the paved driveway, or is that finished space where that paved underneath that part of the house where you said the pipe's coming underneath the slab, right?
Yeah, it's the basement. It's coming out underneath the basement footing.
Okay.
So, Even if we put a pump chamber back there, the walls still have to come out, and you still have to get a tank back there. So the leaching really, it looks bigger, but it's a shallow dig, because these are shallow chambers. So the excavation for the leaching is actually not as intrusive, but the tank, you're gonna have to put a tank back there no matter what.
Right, but what I'm saying, would it be easier and less costly to route the pipe from the side of the house out to the front of the house and put the tank and the SAS in the front yard to avoid any work over there, without even touching the walls at this point?
Dan, can you use your arrow to show us where Steve's talking about moving it
See the word paved driveway?
to under the paved driveway?
Yeah, so you come out under the paved driveway and put the whole septic system underneath the driveway and in the front yard, because you look at the grades, it's only a 2-foot grade drop from
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
front corner of the house down to the street there, or the front property line, I should say. You know, and then you don't have to touch the walls, you have to get in there.
And you have enough room.
Yeah, if
It
there's.
looks like it, eyeballing it, but
I've not seen the plumbing. I'll check to see
Yeah,
where we
just-
can move the plumbing, because it's at the back of the house. That is the garage side, so it's a slab above. I'd have to see how the plumbing is. I have not been inside to see how that, how it gets down to that, under the footing, to see if it can be turned and brought out the front.
Yeah, because you, basically, it looks like, what, an 8-foot drop that you have from that corner and that right photograph, right, down to grade?
Yeah,
And you said the pipe is below that.
it is.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'd have to pick it up inside the house and bring it out front.
Yeah.
I have not seen it, so I don't know what's
Okay.
fully entailed.
Yeah, I just, for an alternative, them, saying, okay, what the cost and the construction benefits, one versus the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none. My thought is a continuance. Take a look at the plumbing inside the building and see what you can come up with. I don't know. You're gonna still lose some time, though.
Yeah.
We end up back at the same spot. You want me to move forward with an NOI?
If you're going to not pursue moving this tank and system up to the front of the building, I would say you're probably gonna be better off with the NOI.
With the walls
I'll take the
decided
motion,
upon?
I'll take the motion for the request, and it'll probably end up being positive, but I'll see what I get, okay?
But if we change the location of the front, we could keep it as an RDA?
I think we could.
Yeah, because we minimal impacts, right?
If they're not gonna be altering the retaining walls to reinstall the septic, then I think an RDA would still be appropriate for that.
Okay.
even if you have to jack up the driveway to do that. You're gonna have to jack it up, right?
Yeah, the driveway would be torn up and dug out, but,
The whole front yard?
yeah, but then we went on dealing with everything on the side and all the retaining walls and, so it's less, construction, probably less costs. I'm not sure on that end of it, but you're not dealing with the walls, or you're not closer to the wetland, it's out in front of the house, so.
Right.
Um,
But procedurally, a continuance request is the cleanest way to go.
yeah, I would say so. Then,
That's on the applicant.
yeah, I'll make a motion to continue for,
But we have to have permission of the applicant
yeah, if you,
or their
Yeah.
representative.
Yeah.
Is that amenable to you, to continue? You can have a minute, sure.
I can answer something that she asked. When you're looking at
no,
that,
you
You gotta
get,
sit
Mike,
down.
Just have a seat.
Talk into the
And
microphone, because it's
when
broadcast.
you're looking at
for the
that
record,
right
can we-
picture,
Are you the owner, sir?
yes,
You're
I'm
the owner.
Charles.
Okay.
So the tree on the right picture, so that is in the bottom, it's a
Right.
two-level
Yeah, I know.
thing. So
Yeah.
that tree is in the second
Right.
level. So that tree would have to come out.
Right, no, I
if
was
that's
ask-
in the way.
Yeah.
The other two are pine trees, and that's way over to the left. That wouldn't, I don't know, I don't think so. But that one's
No,
gotta
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
What else did you want to know?
Right now, the commission's asking for a continuance so that we can address their concerns with the retaining wall. And also investigating turning the plumbing and possibly bringing the system out front, because as it sits right now, the system is close to the resource areas, and also it has to do with taking the walls down. So the commission's giving us the opportunity to see if there are alternatives rather
That'd be
than,
nice.
rather than doing.
The guy that came over that might be the one doing it, he did look at those walls. The walls are probably, it's just wood, and they're probably 30-something years old. So
Yeah.
they're due. I mean, one day the driveway's just gonna go down. So, the guy doing it knew that he was gonna need concrete and a rear wall.
Yeah.
Whatever he knows everything, and we don't know anything.
You're just the owner.
We live there.
Yeah,
You
there
just
you
pay
go.
for it all.
Yeah, so whatever you guys want us to do, and
So
he
we're good?
thinks is good,
Continuance?
Okay, so,
we're just bystanders.
Okay. Make a motion to continue the hearing for 42 Sandy Way until, is it January 9th?
for a date somewhere.
Yeah, it'd be January 9th at 6:54.
Okay.
6:54.
So, but with the stipulation that if the alternative doesn't work out, that they'll file a notice of intent filing for that hearing, or to be the next hearing after that?
Right. I don't see how you get around it. I mean, you
Yeah,
have-
it's,
Right.
the
Why couldn't
RDA
they
is
do it
already.
that hearing?
Well,
If it doesn't work, to come prepared to file the NOI.
well, they have to file it ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
at that point, if they know beforehand, they can withdraw the application, then go through with an NOI. Otherwise, we're gonna go through with the hearing that night and play the cards however it works out. If they come back with a different plan, the commission feels is acceptable, you can still give it a negative that night. If not, then it's a positive, and obviously coming back with an NOI. So they have some options from there, but we have to have it set down. I can't just have it
Right.
tentative, that's all.
Right.
We're gonna have to know know ahead of time in order to do the 10-day
Absolutely.
notice to the abutters and also issuance to DEP. So, we're gonna have to make that determination soon in order to make that for the next meeting.
Yeah, yeah. And you have well before the next meeting to do that, so
Right.
you should.
Okay, so is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. So a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none?
Just a quick comment.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just in regards to the tree, if it turns out the commission, issues a negative determination, we can certainly condition mitigation if that's acceptable to the applicant for the loss of the tree. I just didn't, see that as part of the discussion, but if a tree needs to come out,
Yeah.
we can, if it is issued a negative determination, we can have that mitigated for,
Sure.
if that's acceptable.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, Glenn, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
And you know everything about that. Yes, you do.
Well, that's a tough one, huh?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Just, when I read that narrative, I was like,
Yeah. Now calling the hearing for 157 Daniels Island Road, Frank T. and Christina O. Varinos, proposed raise and replace of a single-family dwelling with an IA septic system. Representative is Down Cape Engineering, and this is a notice of intent, DEP file number 433322. Good evening, gentlemen. If I can have your names for the record, we can begin.
Sure. Good evening, Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouthport, and with me is Andrew Garrelay with the Yarmouthport Design Group. He's the landscape architect that's helping us out with plantings and mitigation plantings on the site. In the audience is Joao Junqueira of Cape Wide. He's the very able builder for the applicant. We're here to present on 157 Daniels Island Road in Mashpee. So this, to start out with existing conditions, is a 1955 home. It's been here for a long time. It's near some resource areas. We're kind of on the peninsula that's called Daniels Island that sticks out between Pompanesett Bay and Aquay Bay. There's Daniels Island Road on our left. I've colored in the existing conditions plan, just highlighting all the current impervious areas on the site. We've got a large paved driveway that loops down back to Daniels Island Road, and we've got a pretty good size ranch-style home with patio and some walkways. Of note, on the uphill side of the driveway, there's a small retaining wall, which we'll be replacing. Andrew can go over some of that. And there's a few trees proximate to the house. We've got a pretty extensive lawn that goes all the way down here, and you can see we're going to be doing some plantings there to help mitigate for a slight increase in structure coverage. But I would like to point out, you can see all the yellow on this plan, and then if you just contrast that to the yellow on this plan, this is the only impervious that's going to remain on the site, and all of that is going to be put into dry wells. So we're really taking a lot of stormwater runoff off the equation. Stormwater runoff can leach effluent into the bays and create issues. So it's a very significant increase. We're taking the driveway that extends on the northwest side, and it's important to realize that there's on the Aquay Bay side, there's a coastal bank which presents itself at the top of the driveway right near the flood zone, and there's a coastal bank from Pompanesett Bay which has, as you can see from the map here, there's a little more of a fetch coming from this way, and sometime back in the 50s they did armor that wall to protect the house, so that's pretty stable over there. But there's a coastal bank, the typical DEP profile, where you take a look at where the flood zone hits over 25%, run up to where it's less than 25%, nice clean delineation along there. This one on this side is a what you call a tiered coastal bank. It's just under the flood zone, right at it, where there's a nice flat driveway, where the slope is just not quite 25%, but you'd consider it where it hits the flood zone, which is basically that spot there. Anywhere else is too flat for a bank. So we've got competing coastal banks. You've got land subject to coastal storm flowage. So there is a velocity zone over here that hits into the house a little bit. Further is all A zone, or excuse me, X zone. On this side here, you can see the X goes like this. There's an A zone that comes up over here, elevation 13, and that breaks down to 11, and the 11 goes up pretty much close to the house. That's the very detailed FEMA mapping, how they do that. So what we're doing is taking the house and sliding it just a little bit out of the A zone so that we're not going to be in the flood zone anymore. You can see portions of the home are within that flood zone, and we're pulling it out. It's the armored bank, which is a little, nice and stable over here. We're going from 11.9 to 12.3 and shifting it a little bit and heading just a little bit to the south. So with these projects, we show a 50-foot buffer because that's very important for the health department. The Title V minimum is 50 feet to a resource area, and we were able to get the 3-bedroom septic 50 feet from the coastal bank, so no Title V variances required. We would be looking for variances from the Board of Health, but under maximum feasible compliance, we're doing the best that we can by moving that as far from the resource areas as we can and tucking it up in the highest portion of the lot. We're also introducing an innovative alternative septic system, a microfast, which will pull quite a bit of nitrogen out. So net, there's a significant reduction in nitrogen, where we're going from 3 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms. Drew had just asked about the floor plans. I would just note on the side, if you look at the upper level, there's an area with some bunks in it that you walk through that to get to the 3rd bedroom. And under Title V, it's kind of a technicality, but you have to have privacy for a room to be a bedroom. So if you walk through a room to get to the last bedroom, the 1st bedroom doesn't count. So it's just kind of like a large bedroom with a divider in it, but that would be technically just a third bedroom. And the Board of Health will, carefully adjudicate on that. But we've got the microfast, we've got the 3 bedrooms. Again, from existing where we've got a lot of yellow of impervious surfaces, uncontrolled, to nice pervious driveway and only a little bit of roof, which is all going into detailed dry wells. We feel that's a nice improvement. And the mitigation calculations are broken out. I can have Andrew go over that if you have any issues, but they, as regulations require, we looked at the 0 to 10 to 15 to 20 to 25 to 30. There's a reduction up to about 35 feet off, so we're reducing impacts within 35 feet, which is always, I think, the most important areas, and we're increasing slightly outside of that, but then mitigating fully. If you do your regular calculations, you'd need 540, but you've got the 2-to-1 catch-all at 867, so times 2 would be 1734, and I believe Andrew's plan has on it 1,800 is what the exact number is on that square footage. So more than twice the mitigation. So when you look at build versus no build, you've got a nice mitigation package. You've got an IA system. You've got a big reduction from a highly impervious site to a quite pervious site. And again, that's going to be infiltrated into the ground. So we think it's a reasonable project. It's not a McMansion. It's a reasonably sized home. And I'll have Andrew just touch base on the landscape, and afterwards I'd be glad to answer any questions if you do have them.
Thank you.
What is the increase in square footage?
So we usually look at roof area, and you can see here that it's pretty similar. Your jurisdiction will generally look at, what's the square footage of impact, in a plan view, how the raindrops drop, and that's fairly similar. I could do the arithmetic on it, but I'm sure we're within 10% or so. But there is more habitable space proposed. Right now, they've got kind of a drive-under basement. There's not much room down below, and it's a ranch style. So I think they're a little over 2,000, and this is, I think, in the 3,900 range. So it's bigger, but the footprint is almost the same.
And the 3,900, that's accounted for because the basement is finished, did you say?
Well, the basement is above the flood zone.
Yeah.
But you've got a first and an upper level. I would have to review the
I'm
floor
just
plans, but-
eyeballing it. I don't have
Yeah,
that.
that would be basically a couple of levels of habitable space. I
Yeah.
don't know that the basement is finished. It's very close to the flood zone, but there is levels up above, so,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Okay. First thing I want to mention is, as I was sitting here in the audience, I realized that I only accounted for 3 trees being removed, and there's actually a 4th. This one was removed late in the design, and I forgot to put it into my chart. So I would be proposing to put 2 more eastern red cedars somewhere on the site. But I just wanted to preempt that right off the bat. So as Dan mentioned, we would be removing the driveway from this area here and making the rest of the driveway a gravel driveway. This is a very flat area coming through here. There is an existing stone retaining wall along the existing driveway up through here, and we're going to have to remove that it's not in good shape anyway, to do the construction, and we're proposing to put in a new wall at the same height, about a 2-foot high wall. There's a drive-under garage. The front steps, whenever we have a kind of a walkout or drive-under garage, it gets difficult getting the stairs up to the house. So we've broken that up a little bit by incorporating 3 large curved steps in this area, which allows somebody to go from the driveway to this walkway and then catch the existing grade on stepping stones to get around the side of the house. And also, these would be masonry stairs going up to a landing here, and then a more normal-looking porch landing with a couple of steps in front of that. Just kind of breaks up the view aesthetically, but that's how it's put together. So this is retained on this side. We've got a little planting bed here, over on this side, we've got a retaining wall 2 feet high with a set of steps going up. where there was a drive-under garage on the existing house over here, we're just going to infill the little valley that was made for that driveway, so it resembles more of the natural grade. It blends in more with that natural grade there. We've got a generator off to the side here, and around the house, the air conditioning units are on this side of the house, and everything else is just a little bit of small planting along the foundation on the back side. The mitigation, as you can see, infills this where the old driveway was, and so this is actually a coastal bank. So we're restoring this with native vegetation, including eastern red cedars. Let's kind of go through them here. There's a little bit of sweet fern along the near the water. I did get some groundsel bush in there. There's northern bayberry, sweet pepper bush in this area over in here a little bit, red chokeberry, inkberry, winterberry, northern arrowwood, and also some a couple of American hollies are also in as part of the mitigation. And that's pretty much sums it up until there's questions, I guess.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go to commissioners first for questions or comments.
Okay. A couple questions, guys. Just on some of my site visits recently, I noticed that the silt fences are just getting blown over with erosion, wind, and everything, where this is on a high wind location and everything. Can we switch over to straw wattles or straw sock, something heavier duty, because you're going around the whole property, around the whole water side, all the way down along the driveway, back down to the road, correct?
Yeah, maybe both. I mean, would that be reasonable? Silt fence with it, straw wattle, socking it in. Sometimes that's pretty decent.
Yeah, because there's some steep topography there, especially on the driveway side, and, during construction, things just get knocked over because the silt fence is so.
It does catch the wind sometimes. I know I saw more real estate signs.
You do a
everywhere
combination of the two, that would work better for a long
They
term.
both hold each other up. Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion.
And then, down the bottom of the driveway, be great to have a cobble apron there to catch any stones coming down because of the topography. And then along the edge of the driveway, I noticed there wasn't a edging. I think over time, the stone's gonna migrate where it's so steep along that, it drops off pretty quickly there, so you can do either cobble edging or, I don't know, what do you do with steel or steel
Cobble or
edges?
steel, yeah, depending on the budget, sure. That sounds reasonable. Maybe if we could leave the builder the option, just depending on, but that would
Yeah.
hold up that edge and kind of define it. I think that's a fine idea.
And then, the only other suggestion I would have is, down where you have the overhead wires that's coming up, that's all long going down there, Andrew? Down to where the
It's-
wall is and the
Yeah,
edge
it's
of the driveway?
existing Cape Cod lawn at this point, and would
Okay.
continue to be.
Can we do like a planting bed down there, down this bottom corner down here? Just to,
I suppose we could, yeah.
Is there a tree there now, I think, a small one, or? We've got
Yeah, I don't
something
know,
in there.
it just looks all open down here, so if we
Yeah,
can
there's.
do a planting bed down
I know
there.
there's at least one tree.
Because that's at the bottom of the grade, it goes
Yeah.
down to, I'm seeing, 12, goes from 16 down to 12 pretty quickly there. Some, just.
So we'd probably put in that electric underground, I would assume.
Yeah, that's
that would be a little more
that's the existing right
Yep.
there.
the overhead, and the underground is shown as a darker line, E, but that'll clean that up too.
Yeah, so if you
Visually.
just, I think, on your plan, Dan, you show a tree there, but Andrews doesn't,
Yeah, I show a dot, but I
Dot
didn't
there,
label the
yeah.
tree.
so.
There is
I don't know.
there is something there. Well, we'll check it out. If it's worth replacing, we'd be happy to.
Yeah,
And then
if you do, planting bed with some of the similar plants there, just to match up, that'd be great there. So, I think those are my only comments. Other than that, everything to me looks normal. Because it looks like everything on the top of the coastal bank, you're just keeping it as it is, right?
Exactly, no change to the brush line.
There's a big Elaeagnus autumn olive that's right at the top of the bank. There's a big one there with a lot of seed pods on it that I marked for removal at the top of the coastal bank. You'll see a red X on my plan.
That's invasive, right?
It's an
Andrew?
invasive, so I wanted to remove it. Keep going up, or keep scrolling up, sorry. See the red X right there? Yeah. Yeah, it's a good size autumn olive and producing a lot of berries that are getting dispersed.
Okay. Yeah, that's
So I'd like to remove that.
And is that the tree, Andrew, that you said you had omitted on this?
No, it's the one at the septic system. So possibly it'd be a good place for me to put I'd like to propose two eastern red cedars, 7 to 8 feet, to mitigate for that. And maybe we could put that near where Steve was saying, at the bottom of the driveway, in that area, in that general area. Obviously not taking out that existing tree, but adding toward that corner to make a bigger bed there.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Okay.
Yeah, those are great habitat, as you know, and they're very hardy, so they'll survive well.
Other questions from commissioners?
I've got some questions.
Sarah?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Hi, Dan. Hi, Garrett. I have some questions, also just a couple of concerns. The first one is the issue with the flood zone or not flood zone. So on the map, we've all seen the layers. There's a little bubble on the site that's mapped as Zone X, and the rest of the site, of course, is the A zone because you're surrounded by water and coastal bank. And there's a resource that we were given by a coastal geologist from CZM that came to speak with us, a manual. I just wanted to, for the benefit of the applicant, also for the folks in the room, to read some information on the limitation of these firm maps, and to follow up and ask if there's been like a site delineation done to really confirm whether or not that bubble is outside of the flood zone. But I'll read from this manual. It's on page 91, in case anybody wants to check it out. It says the flood zone designations on firms are a useful starting point, but should be used with caution due to the following limitations. Firms are graphic representations of engineering data. They're predictions of where the extent of the various levels of hazards will occur based on models of the condition at the time of the study. And the FEMA firm maps that we have are dated in 2014, right? Landforms often change after mapping occurs due to human modification, construction, or natural processes like shoreline migration that we're seeing with sea level rise. FEMA does not take future erosion or sea level rise into account on the firm layers, and the detailed analyses are only conducted at specific transects, and engineering judgment is used to connect the delineations between these transects. So it's just like anything else, this is modeled data. So whether or not the proposed dwelling is actually outside the flood zone, I remain unconvinced unless you can tell me that you've gone on site and done an on-site delineation to show that those restrictions would not apply to protect the resource area. So that's just one concern. Maybe I'll pause for a minute and.
Sure, I'd be interested in getting that cited source,
Yep, it's available for free online. I'd be happy to
but
distribute the link.
who wrote it?
It was written by the Massachusetts Office of Coastal Zone Management and the Department of Environmental Protection.
Okay, so what they miss on that, which is very important, is that FEMA does, when they're mapping V-zones, carefully look at landforms and erosion. They have got a whole section in the CZM about how much of a dune has to erode before they'll ignore it and have the V-zone come landward of it. So I would not think it's you know, to say that they don't account for future erosion, okay, but they certainly account for the dynamic structures, the size of the dunes, the massing of them, and the size of the storm when they do their mathematical modeling. What I would say is that rather than rely on the graphic, what we do is we download the data layer in GIS format, latitude and longitude, and directly insert it in a CAD, which is registered to the state plane coordinate system. So with as certain as you can possibly be, these lines are exactly as they came from FEMA. Now, it used to be that the maps were terrible. Until they redid them with LiDAR, the accuracies would do letter map amendments and letter map changes all the time because they would be off by feet, they'd be off by 20 feet. These newer maps I think you could take some comfort in are within a few inches vertically of being perfect everywhere. The only time you'll get an error is if you've got like a very heavily matted wetland, say with the brush, the LiDAR won't go through. The way that they do it is that the way they get through trees is they have a very dense LiDAR scan, about 4 or 5 shots per square meter, and they actually come down between the branches and they eliminate all the upper ones. So it's a very accurate tin. And then, of course, they do have to do the mathematical model to say, okay, this is the storm surge that's coming, and where does it come up to? To give you further, so it's fairly accurate. And the new ones, I think I've only done 1 or 2 map amendments since the new ones came out. They're very tight vertically. The other thing that's a bit of a factor of safety and for coastal resiliency is that the initial FEMA maps, when they came out, had the flood levels where the old ones were. There's a datum shift between NAVD 88 and NGVD 29 of about 0.9 of a foot. And they were dropping all the flood zones about a foot. The maps were issued, we looked at them. Then Superstorm Sandy came, and they had all the FEMA consultants recalibrate their models, and everything came up 2 feet on the south side. So you've already got baked into this about 2 foot conservative from where they were going to issue them before that one storm came that hit and was above the modeled 100-year flood elevation. So that's an additional factor of safety. Now, sea level rise is real, but it's about an inch every 10 years, maybe now about an inch and a half every 10 years. So yes, it's coming up, but it's at a pretty modest rate, and you've just got a 2 foot factor of safety, I would say, on some of the modeling down here. So it's mathematically perfect, aligned exactly on the plan. It's got a surveyor's stamp on it. I'm certifying it. That is the legal definition of where that flood zone is, unless you can show an error, and there's not an error because everything checks within an inch, and you go through the legal process of doing a map change. So this is the legal. The building department will take this, my certification on it. I have insurance. It's accurate, and that is where it is. That's what I'd have to say about that. There's some conservative factors built in. It's mathematically perfect, and I've checked everything out. So I'm pretty comfortable with it, and I hope that you folks would be swayed by that.
Understood. Thank you. I think where it comes into discussion here is whether or not the performance standards for the flood zone would apply to the project. However, there are other performance standards for the coastal bank that I have some pretty big concerns about. I understand this is a pre-existing non-conforming structure. The house is there. It shouldn't have been built there. It's very close to these resource areas, but it's already there. There's nothing we can do about it. However, if we're talking about tearing down this house and putting a new house there, I feel like I have some pretty strong concerns about that, because at this point, when the first house was built back in the 50s, a lot of the environmental regulations were not in place to prevent it from being built there, but they're there now. So we're not modifying an existing structure. We're taking down a structure and building a new one. So there are some elements where, in my mind, I'm looking at this as a new build, irrespective of the fact that there's an existing structure there, and there's no way that it meets the setback for our requirements or the performance standards to protect the coastal bank. So I just have some significant concerns about the setback to the coastal bank and the scope of the project. So a question that I would have would be if there are any other areas of noncompliance for the existing structure for the current building codes, aside from not being flood zone compliant, even though we've identified that it's not in the flood zone. And I've been to the property. This house is not going to see any floodwaters for quite some time. But if it's the fact that the foundation is not flood zone compliant, I don't know that that's a compelling need to tear down an existing structure that has fallen into disrepair and replace it with one that's twice the size in an area that's incredibly sensitive. So is there a way this can be renovated without it being a new structure?
I think that's part of what you folks have to weigh tonight, is that, you have got existing a situation with a ton of impervious area. You've got a large sprawling footprint, and it's grandfathered in, and the owner could absolutely live in it. He could rehab it. He could leave all that impervious area. He could leave the lawn. But what you're getting is, a structure that, as you said yourself, it's up on a peninsula. It's quite high. The first floor is 12.2, where the flood zone is 11. So it's a foot above even the 100-year flood elevation with a concrete slab. It's going to be a very well-built home, designed by professionals and sturdy with all the wind-resistant windows and panels and shear walls and heavy equipment that, would protect it during a storm. So we can say that this is FEMA compliant. What's there isn't, but it is, the first floor right now is lower. We're going up a few feet for coastal resiliency. You've got all the impervious area. You've got none of the mitigation. You've got a big grandfathered lawn versus a modern IA septic system, reducing the nitrogen, taking all the water except for this little one yellow piece, and that's going in the ground with dry wells, pervious patio. Drew did ask me whether that would be pervious or not, and we're happy to do a dry set pervious patio. So it's a versus the existing one, sheets water. So you've got a lot of improvements on the site. There's environmental benefits, and plus you're pulling the driveway and some of the most egregious in the bank out and planting at a 2-to-1 ratio. So you have to weigh, do you leave a big sprawling 3-bedroom that's not FEMA compliant, or do you take all the benefits that we're proposing? And I'd like to say that I think it's a better project for the environment, what we're proposing, than what's there now. And again, we've got the septic here. We've got a setback to that of 20 feet, 10 there, so we're pinched. And you certainly want the septic as far from, down the bottom of the triangle, as far from the water as you can. So we haven't got much choice in moving the house, but I think it's a win-win right now. And I'd like to hear what everyone has to say. Hopefully we could find a way to approve it.
Understood. Thank you very much. I do have significant concerns on the stability of the coastal banks on the property with all the disturbance to build a house of this magnitude.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah, pass it back to
Anyone
you.
else? Sandy, anything?
Could you give me an explanation again about that bunk room not being a bedroom? I didn't
Yeah,
quite get
so the way that it is there's no limit on the size of a bedroom you can have. And in this case, we've decided to basically put a demising wall in the middle of a big bedroom. And so the thought process on it is that in Title V, and as mirrored by the local code, a bedroom has to have privacy. If there's a room behind it, you got to call one or the other a bedroom. In other words, if you have to walk through a room to get to the back bedroom, then this can't be a bedroom. It's got to be classified as a hallway. And if you want to call this a bedroom, then this is just going to be a closet or something. It can't be a bedroom. So basically, if you don't have privacy, if you can have to walk through a room to get to the back, then only one of the two can be called a bedroom. And generally, you'd call the back one a bedroom and the front one, again, you could take the wall down, just have a giant bedroom, but we're just dividing the bedroom into 2 partitions. So it's for the kids, the grandkids in the summer, they're not going to be a big impact, but that's the thought on it. Again, it can't qualify as a bedroom if it doesn't have privacy. If you have to walk through the room to get to another bedroom, it's eliminated from the important leg of privacy. It's got to be 120 square foot, have a window, heat, and privacy. And you take away any one of those, and it's not a bedroom, and therefore it's not technically a bedroom. And we'll have the Board of Health carefully look at that. If they're uncomfortable with it, we'll make a modification and just make it a bigger room. But 3 bedrooms max. I told them we couldn't expand it, and the reason you don't want to expand until they get sewer, which is who knows when, you're going to need variances from Title V, and they would be very unlikely to be granted based on the fact that you meet Title V, but the local Board of Health doesn't like to grant variances to expand the number of bedrooms. So from day one, we said 3 bedrooms, put in an IA, and they're happy to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Staying with this bunk room, if the Board of Health calls that a 4th bedroom, you would have to then change your septic profile from 330 GPD.
No, they would say get rid of the bedroom. There's no, in my 20-whatever years of permitting, you don't go for expanding bedrooms in a nitrogen-sensitive area. This is an NSA per the Mass DP. It's just a non-starter when you've got tight setbacks like this. So we'd just take it down the wall between them, that's all.
So for the record, you're staying with 330 GPD?
100%. That's the design flow, and it's based on bedrooms. You can have as many bathrooms as you want. You can have as many living rooms. kitchens, that sort of thing, but 3 bedrooms, and we're sticking to that.
Okay.
We're going to die on that hill.
In terms of housekeeping on the septic plan itself, and I know call-outs are, for the most part, copy-paste, but this is a plan that, if we approve, will be on record. And it says the effluent testing shall be required as per the town of Dennis and Title V. So that needs to be cleaned up.
Sure, though they have a good regime.
This is Mashpee.
Yeah, but, yeah.
And on the maps themselves, I know you have 50-foot setbacks, but here in Mashpee, we have a 75-foot buffer zone.
Yes.
75 and 150. So
Yeah, but
in
again.
the future, coming before this board, you should keep that in mind, that the buffer zones should kind of align with what our qualifications call for.
Understood, yeah. Again, we have that on there for the health department, because Mashpee Board of Health still the Title V has the 50. The 75 doesn't really even show up, but I hear you loud and clear, and that's a
Yeah, because if you
important
close in those
distinction.
250s to 75s, that whole SAS system is pretty much in the buffer.
Yeah, everything's in it.
Right.
And,
So again, they're housekeeping things, but I tend to pick up on little details on plans.
Sure.
That's all I had. I'll go to the agents next, because I know in the agent report, there was talk of a 4th bedroom, so I'll be curious to hear what you guys have to say on that as well.
Yeah, so I did have a meeting with Dan, regarding that 4th bedroom, and to kind of clarify that, make sure it was clarified before the commission tonight, which I believe they have done, because I was kind of confused as far as the number of bedrooms, the way the plan was presented. So I wanted to emphasize that they clarify that before the commission. And Steve had mentioned also, one of my other recommendations was to have that cobble apron at the bottom of the driveway, just to capture any sort of runoff in a heavy rain event, and prevent it from leaching out into the road. Basically, you from my comments, that, when you're proposing a larger structure, as Dan had mentioned and detailed, there is an exchange of, improvements from an environmental perspective. I understand, any sort of construction activity when you're dealing with a raise and replace is going to create disturbance, but, there are mitigating factors that can reduce disturbances, such as, enhanced erosion control, and other protocols to make sure that during the disturbance period, the construction period, impacts are lessened to the greatest degree possible. But, in exchange for a larger footprint home, having particularly that portion of coastal bank that's occupied by an impervious driveway that slopes down towards the road on the unarmored coastal bank side of the property, getting rid of that and having it planted up is a significant environmental improvement, in addition to an IA system and enhanced stormwater capture and reduction of impervious surfaces overall. So I understand where Sarah's coming from as far as, the impacts when it comes to a typical raise and replace project, but when you look at the existing home, if it was to be restored, you don't get those additional mitigation factors because they wouldn't be triggered in that scenario. So, it is an exchange, it is balanced, but I feel that, based on what they presented here, and particularly that portion of the driveway being eliminated and then planted up, is a much better situation than what currently exists today. And I'll just defer to my other comments that I put down for the commissioner's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, is there anything you would like to add?
I just got one quick question. When it comes to demo of everything, are you gonna be doing the driveway, ripping that up and taking the house out all at the same time?
It might not be the worst thing to leave the paved driveway as kind of a work pad, because then you're not tracking dirt.
I was
don't
also
know if
gonna.
you've given any thought to that, but if
Yeah.
that sounds reasonable, we could probably leave the pavement for a while.
The only reason I was going to say that is because where you're going to be replanting the coastal bank, I could see that being a nice construction access if it were dirt or pavement. And obviously it's a coastal bank, so if it's dirt and they're driving machinery over, it's going to get destroyed. So if the pavement is coming up, all I would ask is put an erosion control right at that where the driveway is, right there, to stop any equipment from going over it, just so the coastal bank doesn't get deteriorated before plantings go in. That's all.
Good evening, João Junqueira, Cape White Construction. We probably, with your help, we can determine what you want to stop taking the driveway apart, doing construction. Then when we're done with the major construction, we can take the rest of the driveway.
Yeah, I would rather the driveway stay there until you're ready for it to come out, just because it's gonna be heavy equipment, dumpsters, you name it, the whole 9 yards. So I would recommend that. I just know everyone does things different, so if you could do that, that would be the best.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Okay. Questions or comments from the public? No? Okay. I would accept a motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for close an issue for 157 Daniels Island Road with the following conditions. Number one, the patio to be made of pervious material. Number two, install a cobble apron at the bottom of the driveway. Number three, the beefed up erosion controls that we discussed and edging along the driveway, permanent edging. Keeping the asphalt driveway in place during construction and to be removed after all heavy construction. Submission of a signed 3-year mitigation monitoring contract between the property owner and a certified horticulturalist or wetland consultant. And then another condition would be to have weekly reports, photos, or inspections during construction to monitor any erosion or issues out there, because it is a tough site, so.
Weekly.
Okay,
Weekly,
is
yeah.
is that something that the contractor could provide photos if it's not a heavy rain and I could forward? Or do you need weekly visits from an engineer? What were your thoughts on that, Steve?
Yeah, typically, right, Dan, weekly visits from photos submitted to?
Yeah,
you
photos
guys, yeah.
submitted from the contractor after a heavy rain event, or anything like that. Or if you're on site from you and have you forward them to our office, once they're forwarded, if we have questions, the first thing we'll do is an on-site inspection with them.
Yeah, but we want to do that weekly or bi-weekly?
I would say bi-weekly. In
Bi-weekly.
this case,
Okay.
should be perfectly fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the 2 additional trees.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, and the additional trees down at the bottom of the driveway. And then, did you note that tree, that invasive tree that you wanted to come out? Is that noted on the plan, or?
It's on the plan.
It
Yes.
is, yeah.
I could coordinate and put that on my plan too. I had missed that, but it was on Andrew's plan, so.
Okay.
Because I'm going to revise mine as well, I'll coordinate that.
Okay, great.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay, is there a second?
Second. Oh,
Question, Mr. Chair. Do we address the coastal bank setbacks that are not being met? I don't see a waiver in the packet.
There was no
Can you
question about...
educate me on this?
There was no question about setback on coastal banks, you're right.
Yeah. Do we address this before we make a motion to issue this without receiving some sort of waiver request? Can you educate me on this?
If you'd
Procedure-
rather have a waiver
Proc-
request, if you're, I did prepare one in an abundance of caution. If you'd feel better about it, we could submit one.
Procedurally, I'll take the second for the vote, the motion.
shall I give it back, or?
And no, I'll
No.
take that.
Okay.
And now, under discussion, you're questioning the coastal bank.
Understood,
So
yep.
I'd like the commission to weigh in on that as to how they would like to address the lack of setback for the coastal bank. That's what you're referring to.
Correct.
Okay.
Are you satisfied, Sarah, with if they submit a waiver application?
I could read a quick waiver into the record if you'd like, and if it's acceptable, I could submit it. Or
Do you have
however you'd like
multiple
to do it.
copies of that?
I do have 10 copies.
Could you just distribute a copy of each to
Sure.
the commissioners before you read that into the record?
Grazie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
So it looks like this lists the 50-foot setback, and our regulations are 75. Just,
There are a couple of regulations. They do still list 50 in the most current ones that I downloaded today from the internet, but I can certainly initial in 75 if you're more comfortable with that. But this is what we wrote. for SC 433322, Varanos, 157 Daniels Island Road, Mashpee. We respectfully request a waiver from the Mashpee Rules and Regulations, Chapter 174, for the proposed redevelopment work to occur within 50 to 75, I would add, of the coastal resource areas on a previously developed residential lot. The proposed project is to replace a three-bedroom dwelling with a new three-bedroom dwelling further away from the coastal bank. Improvements include introduction of an innovative alternative septic, removal of significant impervious areas adjacent and in the resource areas, and dry wells for all roof runoff. While impacts to resource areas are being reduced, there are portions of the redeveloped dwelling within previously developed lawn areas within 50 and 75 of the coastal bank, and removal of the driveway within the coastal bank. You know, we're physically working in the bank, so if you need a waiver from that, I added it. Again, it's a big improvement, but it is working within the bank, which is kind of a different animal. The compelling need for waivers is to allow a reasonable redevelopment of the current FEMA non-compliant structure with a compliant structure pulled out of the FEMA flood zone. The overall square footage of hardscape within the 0 to 35 is being reduced significantly, and in moving the structure, some of the relocated footprint is within the 50 to 75-foot buffer where there's lawn currently. We feel that the waiver requests are minor in nature, given that the hardscape within the coastal bank and flood zone area are being reduced significantly, with the proposal offsetting the minor increase in the buffer to the bank. The mitigation measures of increasing natural plantings and buffers per the redevelopment formula, 2 to 1 minimum, will also protect the surface and groundwater quality, reduce runoff, and therefore sedimentation, which will assist in the protection of fisheries, shellfish, and wildlife habitat, and help protect against adjacent aquaculture. And not a friend of silt. As noted in the plans, a significant driveway hardscape removal and revegetation will occur within the resource areas, and the home footprint over existing lawn is significantly further from the resource areas and the existing paved driveway. The entire paved driveway is being replaced with pervious gravel surface, resulting in a substantial improvement in pervious coverage on the site. Again, that's the yellow from one side to the other, going way down. Less stormwater runoff resulting from the dry wells and pervious surfaces will protect the adjacent resource versus existing conditions, and an IA septic will reduce nitrogen impacts. Based on the above thoughts and reasoning, we feel the waivers can be granted for the good cause shown in this specific case. And I'd be glad to make any typo adjustments if you need, but that's what I prepared. Thank you.
All right. So we're still in deliberations.
Okay, so do we amend the motion to include the waiver request?
I think you should have
Yeah.
that in there.
Yeah.
It should be
Okay.
part of the
This
record.
isn't the correct chapter or setback zone. I think there's some pretty significant updates here that would make this actually applicable to our regulations. And I do not agree that this is a reasonable redevelopment of a home. We're doubling it in size. It's on top of very sensitive resource areas that I understand are pre-existing non-conforming, already altered. But I went to the site today, and we're talking an awful lot about this driveway being the impetus for pushing this through, and that coastal bank has taken that driveway back. You've seen it, the cracks in the grass, it's taken the driveway back.
Right.
I'm not satisfied that this is a legitimate waiver request unless it comes back amended to actually reference our existing regulations and bylaws. And gives a little bit more in terms of a compelling need for us to grant regulatory relief than what's being called reasonable, which is a doubling in size. Which for the current owners may just be the grandkids coming in the summer, but the next folks that have that house, there may be twice as many people living there. I mean, we're in effect doubling the strain on this resource area. Or we're signing off on it anyway, being asked to. So
Right.
those are my concerns. I'll leave it to the
Okay.
rest of the commission.
I disagree with the statement that it's doubling in size. Yeah, it's doubling in 2 stories, but if you look at footprints, only going from 7% lot coverage to 8.6%
We're
lot
doubling the
coverage.
interior living space is what I'm
Right, but
referring
that, we're only voting on what's on the footprint on the property. What's inside the
to.
building
I'm
is
voting
not
on
in our purview.
whether it's reasonable to double the interior living space of a house because you don't have a flood zone compliant foundation.
But that's
That's a heavy
not in our
impact on the
purview, what's
resource.
inside the house.
I would disagree. I think we're doubling the number of people that can live there and contribute to the septic system. These are all numbers, but in reality,
But
this
that's
could
not
get
in
rented
our,
out to a
that's not in our
basketball
purview.
team. I would disagree. I think it all goes into compelling need, Steve. We can agree to disagree on this, but I definitely don't agree that it's not within our purview to consider,
Okay.
Okay,
so.
So do you want to amend that motion to include this waiver request?
I do, yeah.
Okay. With the changes that need to be made?
Yeah,
It
with
should
the
be
typo
chapter
changes.
172.
172, yeah.
75 foot.
75 feet, yeah.
I don't think there was anything else in there that I saw that was erroneous. Okay, and we can get a copy of that initial by you, sir?
100%, yeah. If anybody wants to mark it up, I'll initial.
Yeah.
And again,
Right there.
One of,
172, 75, 75, 75.
yes, yep, that's what I have
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I missed that one down there.
There you go, Dan.
One of the things that I missed on the plan when we were talking with the engineers, there's a proposed 4-foot-high white picket fence pretty much along the whole coastal bank side of the house that wraps around, I believe, where that, there is a garage door, an existing garage door there now. And typically, when we have a fence
Where
proposed,
is that?
there's a line on the map that showed a 4-foot picket fence that was going around the structure.
The only place I have a 4-foot fence is, I'm sorry, the only place I have a 4-foot fence is right in front of the parking, right here at the top of the wall.
So it may be that tag you associated with a longer line, but that's probably just to keep people from falling off the wall where they're fairly close to it. And as soon as the wall goes under 30 inches, we could stop that. So it'd be just a very short section that would need.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you see that.
Yeah, I remember looking at this, it was one of the layouts. I don't think it was on yours, Andrew. I think it was on the site plan. Hold on.
Picket fence. I don't
A
remember
lot
seeing
of
that.
lines on that point.
Yeah, there are a lot of them, but I thought I remember seeing a black line for a picket fence.
Yeah. Proposed 4-foot-high white picket fence.
Where is that?
Yeah, which page is that on, Sandy?
That's on the landscaping.
Thanks.
On the landscaping plan. Yeah, I'm gonna give that to you for the record.
Yeah, it's right by the parking area,
Yeah.
just on the north side.
So it's just in that parking area? I thought
Yeah.
it wrapped around the whole
No,
building.
it's a short
It's
fence.
a fence.
Yeah, short fence, yeah.
Okay.
Right here, Paul. It goes from here to there.
That's a gate in it.
This whole thing, but,
It's gonna be a lawn here.
yeah. What is this red line?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a diagonal line for the gate.
That's the,
And then, oh, I see what you mean. So that leader goes through the bush and it got cut off, so you think it's the line all around. If the bush wasn't there, you'd see that leader goes only to the one little straight line. That's the issue. Yeah, that's the only fence there is.
Can I approach and show?
You want to highlight it?
Can I approach the chair and show?
Yes, please.
that one isn't.
Any fence.
Is that the one,
I didn't
the one I was looking at, Andrew, is the
I wasn't
red,
looking for.
Yeah. we saw
the
that.
red dashed line.
Pretty subtle.
I saw the label proposed white foot.
But I'm pretty,
So, yeah, it's just that,
usually
That's a
about picket
setback line.
fences, so I'm
The
thinking,
red dash
did
line,
I
that's-
miss it?
That's a zoning setback line.
yeah, see that, that's,
Zoning setback.
okay.
Yeah.
See, I picked up on where it said proposed 4-foot, and I saw the red dashed line, and it said picket
Ah,
fence, so I
yeah.
thought, okay, I don't know why they want it, but, okay, all right.
That would have been confusing. Yep.
Okay. So you are going to amend the motion to include this waiver request?
Yes, the
Is there-
marked up waiver request by
Okay.
the
Is there
engineer.
a second to that
so
amended
do I
motion?
need to second it, because I seconded the original?
Doesn't matter. I just need a second for that amended motion.
Yeah, I'll second.
You'll second that. Okay, so the motion has been now amended to include this waiver request dated December 12th, 2024.
Does that make you happy?
And the corrections have been made
No, you
and
don't want to vote.
initialized, and Dan has that for the record. Okay. Further questions by commissioners? Comments? None?
So can I ask on the square, can I ask you
Yes.
a question on the record?
Sure, sure.
So with the amended amendment, as it now stands before you, that does or does not address your concerns about the size of the property?
I think the scope of the project is still very concerning to me.
So is there an amendment to the amendment that you could offer as a condition or something? Do you want them to come back with is it the square footage?
I would like to see a smaller home with less impact to the resource area, but I'm just one
Yeah.
commissioner, so that would be up to the applicant as to whether or not you're willing to go
I
back
just
and.
don't want a misunderstanding between, to gum up something that might be a very good project for the environment. And I thought I heard you at the very beginning of the hearing say that the basement would not be finished. Is that not the plan?
It's unclear to me. Do you have it? I think it's unfinished. I believe that's the situation.
It's a garage.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
garage.
your drive under.
It's a garage and then it's the mechanical, I think I saw on the
Yeah.
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So that bedroom that can be the third or can be the fourth,
That's up.
that's off?
Up,
That's up, yeah.
up.
That's the one you have to go through, and it can't be a bedroom because you have to go through.
No privacy, yeah. And that's right in Title V, and almost all Board of Healths accept that.
Right.
And they'll look at that carefully.
No, but what I'm saying is to address the issue of the square footage so that we can smooth the pathway for this to pass would be, I don't know how we can do that with anyone. If they sell the property in, 10 years and they've got 8 kids, they might put 8 beds in that. I mean, how do you know?
But that's gonna happen in any house.
That's right, that's what I'm saying.
In any place that happens today, right?
Sure.
You know,
We can expect it.
Anybody could take a 3-bedroom ranch and decide that they're gonna put, three bunk beds in a 12 by 12 bedroom.
I did that once.
And move it in, right? So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, so I didn't want to hold it up.
If you had sitting room, if they had put on the plans that this was a sitting room attached to the bedroom, we wouldn't be having this discussion. We're only having this discussion because the plan shows bunk beds there.
Yeah, and I could
No,
wring
no,
the
I think that's
architect's
part of
neck.
it.
I says, and I could wring the architect's neck.
That's
I'm
part
just
of it.
teasing,
I
but,
think
and
It's a 3-bed.
we're adding
It's
a
3
whole nother
bedrooms.
floor to the house. I mean, I think I would feel a lot better if we were replacing a single-story with a single-story house. This is not an opportunity for a bigger structure. This is a house that never should have been permitted to be built there in the first place, to be quite honest, from the standpoint of the resource concerns. If this were an undeveloped lot, it would never get through as a new build.
Like coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? I mean,
Correct.
It's not an undeveloped lot. It's a
Right.
developed lot now. And I think, the homeowners have seemed to gone to a lot of, being very thoughtful about where they can make improvements on this property. They've changed a lot. I mean, you've talked about that. Drew's talked about that. And I think, second floor versus first floor, and I get I understand that the number of people impact the resource area, but the footprint of the property in the resource is not really changing.
Correct. And I think that there's a lot to consider. What I see from the performance standards for our Regulation 16, Coastal Bank says activities which will result in building within or upon removing, filling, and/or altering of a coastal bank or within 75 feet of said bank may be permitted if necessary for access to beach water, including visual access, if the activity will not induce cumulative impairment of said critical characteristics, and the following projects may qualify. The first one listed is the maintenance of an already existing and lawful structure. Nowhere on here does it say that we need to relax our regulatory standards for new houses. Is there a way to renovate the existing structure? And I heard very early on in the presentation that there was. This is a choice point. That we're talking about a non-flood zone compliant foundation when the majority of the structure we've established is mathematically perfect and it's not in the flood zone. So
some
this
of it
this is not a compelling need to my vantage, and it's an awful lot of disturbance on the stability of that coastal bank for a home that's been there since the 1950s. So these are my concerns. I would like to see a little more effort put into reducing the impact by seeing what we could do with the existing structure, where it seems like this is a very extravagant response to a very small impetus for a project. But I am one commissioner. I will defer to the rest of you all.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else? Nothing else? I'll call for a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Sarah?
No.
Sandy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Well, I appreciate very much your careful consideration, and we'll take all these things to heart. You'll get a nice revision, and we really appreciate you working with us. I think we'll be a good example for the environment here. And, you know, one of the things about these houses, a lot of times no one's in them for 6 months, so it's a light impact. And even the next folks, they might only be here a month or two, so we'll see. But thank you very much for your consideration, and we'll try and be good stewards of the land. Thank you.
There you
Thank
go.
you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You have a great voice on radio.
Very embarrassed.
Very, very deep.
Now calling the hearing for Hamblin Pond Oyster Reef Restoration, Town of Mashpee Natural Resources. This is a proposed reef restoration at Hamblin Pond, water body of Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Representative is Rimmer Environmental Consulting, LLC, and the Nature Conservancy. It is a notice of intent, DEP file number 433323. Good evening. Can I have your names, please, for the record?
Good evening. Yes, thank you. Mary Rimmer from Rimmer Environmental Consulting.
Hi, good evening. Steve Kirk from the Nature Conservancy.
And
Shellfish Constable Chris Davis.
so as you can see, this is a collaborative effort. This is a notice of intent for an ecological restoration limited project. And it is for oyster reef restoration, reef construction in Hamlin Pond. You may be aware of this project. I know it's been talked about for a little while. We have completed the MIPA process, and we have a MIPA certificate on this now, so we're pursuing the rest of the permitting. So it's a collaborative effort with the Nature Conservancy, some technical assistance with from Division of Marine Fisheries and the Mass Aquaculture Association as well. And what we're trying to do is improve biodiversity in the pond by installing the reefs that are going to be constructed from culch, which is aged shells. And in this case, we're proposing to use surf clam shells because they're more readily available than oyster shells, which tend to have other uses, so they don't make their way back into the system quite as easily. But the culch, the aged shells, would be brought to the site and placed in 4 linear columns you can see on the plan here. And they'd be about 1 foot to 1.5 feet high and about 10 feet wide and about 140 feet long. So all the work is in land under the ocean resource. There's 5,600 square feet of culch that's proposed to be placed. In the notice of intent, we used 6,440 because we added another 15% to account for some shifting and movement that may occur once this material is placed, and the possibility for adding additional material over the first 3 years to make sure that it consolidates. Over time, these reefs tend to consolidate as the shells break down and interlock with each other. So there was quite a lot of effort in siting this project. There were a number of locations that were investigated. Some of the criteria were obviously that it had to be located outside of navigation channels. And a primary concern was the type of bottom sediment that is located. It couldn't be too soft because we didn't want the reef to settle too much because the height needs to be maintained. So there were originally 2 sites, but the second site that was looked at was sediment was a little bit too soft. And the other consideration was whether or not there's presence of existing shellfish habitat within the area. This is an area that didn't have very much other shellfish. There were a handful of quahogs. That's about it. This is a site that's been approved by the Division of Marine Fisheries. We have a correspondence from them, both through the MEPA process and also this notice of intent that is supportive of the project, but did recommend 2 special conditions. One, a time of year restriction for the work to protect winter flounder habitat, so no work between January 1st and May 15th, I think it is. And which is perfectly acceptable, and the other is to comply with the planting standards that DMF has, which is part of your propagation permit anyway, I believe.
That's correct.
So it's a fairly simple project in terms of its construction. All the work that, the culch that's proposed to be used is to be collected from existing commercial sources and washed to make sure that the pathogens that might be present are removed before it's reintroduced to the water. DMF has strict standards about how that's done, and the town intends to comply with that. And then it's barged out to the site. The work would be done during intermediate tide where there's enough water so that the barge or the vessel that's used doesn't bottom out, but shallow enough so that you can more readily see into the water column. The location of the reefs will be located by buoys or posts located by GPS, so they can navigate their way through the project area. The project requires a water quality certificate from Mass DEP, as well as a waterways, Chapter 91 waterways license, and an Army Corps of Engineers authorization. So that's all I have for now. We'd be happy to answer your questions.
Could you just tell the commission, what's the timing? I used to know it, but I think you pushed it back a little bit from start to finish.
The timing when they want to do the work?
Yeah.
Well, it likely won't finish the permit. I'll get all the authorizations until sometime probably June or July.
Yeah.
And so
We would likely be working with the town to consider, depending on when all necessary permits are in hand, then sort of when is most feasible to do this. And the best times are sort of in the late fall or perhaps in the late spring. And so,
It's just one season, though. Once you get in there,
yeah, and so what we're talking
days'
about
work.
here is planting the shell or culch, and that happens, in one mobilization.
yeah, okay. That's what I was trying to remember.
Right.
If it was, wait, do it.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
The culch would then be seeded with either live oysters or spat on shell as well.
Mhm. Cool, thank you. You
Other
wanna add
questions?
anything?
Well, I think getting to your question too, so the time of year restrictions specifically.
Oh, sorry.
You need a mic.
Oh, he needs some microphone.
Specifically, just so for the record, the time of year restriction is January 15th to May 31st. That's the winter floundering, flounder.
So, any other time, and then you would pick the time, set the date?
Yep.
You should be all set, yeah, okay.
And I'd just like to add that we've been working on this project with TNC for over a year now, but also in conjunction with the tribe to look at the historical areas where oysters, proliferated. So we looked at Aquay Bay, we looked at Mashpee River, we looked at Gooseberry Island. Unfortunately, the sedimentation in those areas is really tough. It's very muddy and so forth, as many of you know. So we started looking at Aquay Bay, Wacoit Bay, and this is the area that we came up with after a lot of surveys and stuff like that. So, you know, this is a collaboration with the tribe as we're moving forward, TNC and so forth. So this has been in the works for a while, and it will, not unfortunately, but we're at the beginning stages.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I assume those numbers, those can be buoys that are permanently out there?
No, not necessarily. No, those are just to guide the placement.
Okay, so how will boaters and people and kayaks and everything know that, you know, everything,
this
that
one-
you can have that underwater without having a buoy surround it?
You want to take that one?
Sure. The impact to navigation is likely to be negligible. We're talking about changing the bathymetry by, you know, as much as a foot, and it's outside of a navigational channel. So the intention was not to permanently mark the area because it's, you know, it's natural habitat and not changing the bathymetry and
Okay. What's the water depth there?
So probably see that high tide, we're looking anywhere from 3 to 4.5 feet. At low tide, because we have a 2-foot difference, you know, it comes down a little bit. But at the site, and so we're still looking at like 2 feet,
Yeah.
even with
That sounds
the
right.
added culture.
So 2 feet above the top of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just, like,
And it's kind of in like a little bit of a cove. There are some navigational issues, and I wouldn't say with the site, but outside of the site, because as you can imagine, in the middle, it's deeper. You know, as we get closer to the marsh, it starts to rise up and stuff like that.
yeah, but I think as boaters, you know, a lot of people don't follow channels and things like that.
No kidding.
So,
I know.
you know, and a lot of shellfish grants all have buoys around shellfish grants.
Protect
So,
them,
yeah, why would this be any different?
Again, to Steve's point, what we're trying to do is just make it sort of a natural thing. This isn't something that we want to draw attention to. Because the last thing we want somebody to do is be going over there sort of poking around. We don't want people picking oysters, you know, in the summertime, you know, when the water's warm. You know, so we're not trying to hide the project, don't get me wrong. But we're also, you know, it would be delineated on maps at boat ramps and stuff like that. But what we don't want to do is draw attention, you know, and have people, you know, traversing the area and poking around. It's not outside of the purview of having it marked, but I do feel as though that, you know, where this site is located, it's outside of any type of navigational issues. A person in a kayak is not gonna, at low tide, stumble over it and, you know, run into it and so forth.
It's not a very interesting area for kayaking anyway.
Well, there's really, I think, and don't quote me on this, but as you go up Hamblin Pond, as you're sort of heading out towards the culvert, there's probably about maybe 4 to 6 docks. And it's very narrow, it's very slim water, skinny water. So
Okay.
you don't have very big vessels traversing that area. It's really done probably strictly by tide. So you're looking at maybe 13-foot whalers up to maybe a 17-foot, you know, whaler that draws probably less than 6 to 8 inches.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's been like a year since I've walked the coastline there, but you used to have the cages with the oysters.
Not in this location, I don't know.
But it was, so it's farther in front of where the house.
If you look here, there's like an oyster, I don't know if it's oyster, but the shellfish
On the
here.
other side
Yeah.
of this island
Yeah.
is the Burtis
Yeah.
Oyster Grant,
Okay,
and that's their private grant.
and do they do well there?
Yeah, yeah, and in fact, we started this year doing floating gear in Hamblin Pond. And again, we're trying to mitigate the nitrogen loading in all of sort of Hamblin, Jehu, the rivers and tributaries. And yeah, our stores did very well up there this year.
So the expectation is this will be a really, the oysters will like it here and be very happy and.
We're hoping that they'll,
4 stars, they gave it 4 stars. Yeah.
we're hoping that we'll get a natural set.
Yeah.
Which basically means that they would reproduce naturally and actually form a reef and begin to grow.
Because I read the UNH study, and it seemed they kind of had hit or miss in where they repopulated, but it seemed like sediment and things like that were a big draw for it.
It is, and, you know, to be strictly honest with the commission, we don't know if this will work or not, but if we don't try, then how will we know?
Chris, just curious, is this from your existing spat, the oysters that you're doing right now, or is this going to be an additional?
So, TNC is the funding arm of this whole project. There's no cost to the town, except our time. Most likely, we'll be utilizing local growers, and if we have some additional oysters that we may want to, you know, throw at the project years down the road in order to continue sort of the thrivability and sustainability of the project, you know, we probably would add some. But no, it's not coming out of our seed budget.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick note on that. The Nature Conservancy is quite interested to support the aquaculture industry in their participation in this type of habitat creation. And so we're running a existing program right now where we're funding growers to do just that in other municipalities and working with other federal funding opportunities for that to happen into the future. We recognize that town departments are strained and stressed, budgets are tight, and we're trying to find the funding to make this type of activity more common.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? No? Anything from the agents?
No, this is, I don't want to say it's pretty straightforward, but it's definitely innovative and it's definitely new coming out. My only question I have is about eelgrass. With these other studies, has there been any success with eelgrass recovery from it or anything of that? I ask because this section here has I guess I'll call it a dwindling supply of eelgrass.
Yeah, it's previously mapped habitat there outside of the footprint. There's a few different schools of thought in the scientific community. One of the things that drives eelgrass proliferation is the potential for light to reach the bottom. Oysters, being filter feeders, can reduce turbidity and increase the clarity of, you know, the surrounding water such that light penetration makes it further to the bottom. And, you know, if that's a limiting factor for eelgrass to survive, then you may see some recovery from that element. The scope and scale of this project is probably hard to say that it would, you know, have such a great impact on that element of the water quality that would, you know, be a guarantee. You could never say that, but it is part of the intention that water quality improvements can lead to eelgrass that, you know, doesn't go away.
Yeah, understood. Had to ask.
Yep.
So that's it for me, though.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I would just iterate that if the commission were to approve this project, and I think it's a good project, it's a pilot project to see, you know, feasibility of expanding this type of resource enhancement in the future, just to include those conditions that I listed in my comments.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Questions from the public? None? Okay, then I would accept the motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, make a motion for closing issue for Hamlin Pond Oyster Reef Restoration, Town of Mashpee Natural Resources, with the following conditions: that time of year restriction on placement of the culch from January 1st to May 31st to protect the winter flounder spawning activity, and adherence to the Mass DMF's shellfish planting guidelines. This can be referenced in the order of conditions.
Okay. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Further discussion on the motion by commissioners? Anything? We're good? Okay, roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion carries
Thank you.
unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you're going forward with this.
Thank you.
It's a great program.
Okay, I want to read these certificate of compliance requests into the record. The first one is 126 Shore Drive West, Patrick H. and Heather H. Conway. Request for certificate of compliance, DEP file number 4332 85. That has passed inspection. The second one is 32 Crescent Road, Brian Brochu. This is DEP file number 433243. That has also passed inspection. The next one is 3 Secaucet Point Road, Robert L. Lynch. That is DEP file number 433067. That has also passed inspection. And the last one we have requests for is from 3 Keelan Way, Catherine A. and Alan L. Clapp. And that is DEP file number 433111. And that has also passed inspection, so we can sign those forms at the end of our meeting. Okay. I'm going to go back to our pre- and post-hearing agenda items. The first thing that I would like to take up under this list is the approval of draft meeting minutes, and we have a lengthy list. Marjorie, I'm glad you're here because I've been waiting a long time. There's only 2 people that can vote on this set of minutes because all the other commissioners no longer are on this commission. So
No way.
We've been waiting for you.
history does have
That
a
was my intent. That
have
was
a
my
way
design.
of marching on. And this would be the set of minutes for November 10th,
Right.
2022. So if you are okay with those minutes, I've looked through them, and I didn't see anything wrong with them at all.
Some of my favorite minutes.
Some of your favorites.
Yeah, and I'm yes, I'm a yes.
So I would first accept a motion from you to approve those.
Move to pass.
Okay, and I would have to second that. Typically, I don't second
Okay.
motions, but I will. And do you or I want to discuss anything further? I don't think so.
No.
So I'll ask you to vote.
My vote is yes.
Yes, and I vote yes as well. I'm glad those minutes are finally off this list.
Power.
The next set of minutes is for June 27th, 2024. And eligible to vote on those are myself, Sandy, Alex, Marjorie, and Sarah. So we have a quorum of people that can vote on that present. Are you okay with those minutes? You're all set?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me take a roll call vote on that. Steve?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
on
I'm
that.
sorry. I'm on the wrong, there's a long list here. I'm on the wrong line.
Need to make a motion? Motion for it.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I need a motion
A motion to approve?
to approve those June 27th minutes.
So moved.
Thank you.
Yes.
Second?
Second?
Thank you, Sandy. No further discussion by people voting. Roll call vote. Sandy?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. On our list tonight is August 22nd, 2024. Those minutes were approved at our quarterly meeting on November 7th, so those that were listed erroneously, so that's off our list. The next one is September 12th, 2024. I've had a chance to look at those a little bit closer. There was a project during that meeting that was denied. I don't know if there's been any appeal of that filed, but I was concerned that those minutes be exactly the way they should be, and I didn't see anything wrong with them. So we're good on that. So eligible to vote on those are myself, Steve, Sandy, Alex, and Sarah. So if there's a motion to accept those,
So moved.
thank you, Steve. Second.
Second?
Thank you, Sandy. No further discussion on those sets? All right, then voting. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. The next set of minutes, September 26, 2024, those I believe were not distributed. I do not have a copy of those minutes, so I'm going to table that.
I will distribute those then.
I believe, Alyssa, is that this?
Everything was, but I think it was because it was back when I submitted them, so I'll resend them. Also, for this too, there was the executive session for the 26th.
Right. Those are still being held because we're still in executive session with that issue. These are the hearing. Yeah, I didn't find those anywhere in my email, so, okay. The next set of minutes is October 10th of 2024. eligible to vote on those are Steve, Sandy, Alex, Rich, and Sarah. So we have enough people here to vote. Are you okay with those minutes?
Yes.
I've looked through them, they seem to be fine. Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Second?
Second?
Thank you, Sandy. Any discussion? Hearing none. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. The last set listed on our agenda tonight is October 24th of 2024, and those were not distributed to the commissioners as of yet, so we'll put a hold on those until our next meeting. So we're going to roll over 9/26 and 10/24, correct? Okay. All right. Under discussion, at the last meeting, there was a vote to grant a continuance to the project on file for 291 Monomoskoye Road. And there was a question about the number of people that were voting. So I asked our agents to put this on the agenda, because I would like to have a vote to ratify and validate, to confirm that continuance for 291 Monomoskoye Road. So I would like a motion in that regard.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you. First by Steve, second by Sandy. Any discussion, questions on that?
I don't believe I was here for that hearing.
No, you were not.
Okay, so am I sitting this out, or is it, it's a continuance?
You could abstain from it unless you've had a chance to
I have
review
not.
the video.
No, I'll abstain.
The video is tough. There's a lot of audio feedback and
I
a
heard
little
it
bit of
wasn't really worth
silence and
trying to
stuff.
watch.
I went through the whole thing, but just to say that I've reviewed the video so I could, vote with the,
Sure.
I forget the name of that rule.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Rule expediency, I think it was called, something like,
Rule of necessity.
That's what you use to
yeah.
vote the
To vote on it,
continuance in.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a rule of necessity, but it doesn't apply to unelected boards. So
Right.
Legal counsel clarified that, yeah.
Right, okay. Okay, so let me take a roll call vote on that. Steve?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. So that carries, and that has been validated.
And that is on, just so.
290, that was the vote for the continuance on 291 Monomoskoye. Do you have the date on that?
Yep, that's what I was gonna say, January 9th at 6:30.
January 9th, okay. Gotta get used to writing 25.
Yep. Coming quick.
Okay, water quality issues and initiatives. I guess the water quality report for Mashpee Wakeby is going to be heard at the next select board meeting. I heard that was coming up. Fairly lengthy report, so it'll be interesting to see what they come back with. I'm going to take Chapter 173, Regulation 1 draft before I move into Regulation 25. We have received the draft that the commission adopted the last time we met. I believe that was on November 7th that was adopted. It came back with some comments from town council. Those have all been addressed. So I would like to bring that up for discussion and hopefully move it to a date where we can bring it forth to a public hearing and promulgation. So I don't know if you guys have seen all of those
No,
comments?
is this what you're handing out right now?
Most recent one that just went around?
I haven't
Was it
seen
yesterday?
one that went around.
I want to, sometime this week. This is the town council's comments. For the
Okay.
draft. This is not the flood zone. This is 173, not 173.
No, but
I didn't
173,
see
I think
it.
I actually read. Didn't you send it to me?
This was sent out, yeah, this was.
Yeah,
sent
yeah,
out.
I read it.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
I just want to make sure everybody has a copy.
There was one, a couple of small changes, I think, that were made in regards to that. Thank you. Thank you. is needed. The persons proposing or having initiated such activities. I know there was some language in here that we needed to insert the word passive. I'm looking to see if that
Yes,
was
so there
added.
was, the town council brought up the question about recreation.
Yeah.
They wanted to make sure it was passive recreation because on these protected lands, it has to be passive recreation only.
See it.
You know, so things can't be a grill coming and sitting there for a day, that's not passive.
Right.
Has to be something that keep moving.
And that's-
I'm apologize if I missed this on the last revision. Why did we add passive into activities?
Because these are all Article 97 protected land. So because of that, with that protection, it has to be passive recreation only.
And we need to state that?
Town council very much recommended that we do state that, only to specify, is a main way to specify these are protected lands. And since they are only passive recreations used, just a way of specifying it, that's all. That was a recommendation from council.
So would it make sense to add some sort of a footnote then, similar to what we've done in other parts of this regulation that define what passive activities are permissible?
Yeah, we can put in some examples like, you know, hiking, non-motorized, bike riding.
Okay.
Bird watching, you know, those would be examples of passive recreation. We can certainly add those in after the word passive in parentheses, just to provide some examples of what that means.
Great. Yeah, even if it's, you know, the formatting, I think, just is to make sure it's readable, but if there's language to borrow from the existing regulation that we're talking about, prevailing regulation, that would work too.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you. And on the following paragraph that was taken from the 2022 shellfish regulations, I see that there's a proposed new wording, but I don't see what that is. Dan or Drew, do you all have any details on what that might be?
Which one is this, Sarah?
So this is the paragraph establishing that we as the town of Mashpee are recognizing the ancient and aboriginal rights of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's the WAC paragraph.
Yep. And that wording was already approved by the select board for shellfishing regulations back in 2022. So I'm just curious what the proposed new wording
That is the proposed new wording that you're
Oh,
seeing.
okay, so just that, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and I do note that we added reasonably access water and land to hunt, fish, forage, so that reasonably was not in the shellfishing regulations. But we voted on that when this came before the commission on November 7th, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. The other edit that town council had suggested was in the first paragraph. This is under the heading of regulation 1 and subset 1 to add in trails as part of the lengthy list of activities that require permission from the commission. Trails wasn't included, so I added in after improvement of roads, and you can see trails underlined.
Okay.
And other ways. So council just said it would be good just to include that, which I agree with, so I did add more trails there. Does everybody see that in that
Yes.
first paragraph? Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. And then I removed the strike-through language that the commission had already kind of reviewed and agreed upon, just to kind of clean it up. So you can see some of the comments where that strike-through language was just removed, just to make it cleaner. You know, for example, under the heading of regulation 1, I removed the word prohibited. Just as an example, you can see that there in the sidebar. So just to, you know, clean up that strikeout language, because that was already reviewed and approved by the commission, so just to provide a cleaner version for your review.
Great.
Okay. And Drew, where do we stand with the the language in terms of the fine for the offenses, is that going to be established by the select board, or are we going with what we had in our?
We actually, council wasn't aware, but we already have a fine schedule built into the bylaw. So there's no need for the select board to set that fine schedule because it's already been established. And it's up to $300. So it's really the discretion of, the commission as far as if there is a violation, what they feel a sufficient fine is. So it could be as little as $50 and as much as $300. And it's your discretion. There is a kind of example of, what constitutes a $50 fine, a $100 fine, a $300 fine. I don't know if the commissioners have that. If not, I will make sure to get that out to you. But it's just a guidance document more than anything. It's really your discretion as far as what you feel an appropriate fine would be in a given violation scenario. But you can't go higher than $300 because that's the non-criminal disposition cap put on by the state. So 300 is the max. But you can fine an amount, from anywhere from, up to $300 for each day that a violation remains unresolved. So it's not just a one-time fine, it could be daily as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drew, is that $300 pretty much in keeping with other towns in the area? Is that?
Yeah, any town that has adopted a bylaw, that is the cap, because these are considered non-criminal for the most part. But, if it's determined to be a criminal violation, such as dumping of toxic waste on conservation land or something like that, then it would go into a different criminal penalty schedule. But this is for, typical non-criminal offenses that you see, like illegal cutting, any sort of activities on conservation lands that may be, cause damage, but relatively small, minor scope, but non-criminal category.
But like Barnstable and Falmouth would have the same dollar threshold?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, all towns will be throughout the Commonwealth that have an established home rule bylaw.
Yeah.
This is the same fine schedule and amount that they are limited to.
Thank you.
Personally, I wish it was higher. I think that even $300 is kind of equates to a slap on the wrist in some instances, but it is what it is.
Okay.
And so the amount is at the discretion of the commission, but the issuance of the citation is at the discretion of the conservation staff, is that correct?
Yeah, we would be the ones that issue the citation.
Okay.
You would be the authority to determine the amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Looks good.
Looks good?
Yeah,
So we'll move on that. We'll get those examples in for passive recreation.
that'd be great. Or a footnote, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then we can mark that up for perhaps our next meeting. Does that make sense, Drew?
Yeah, it'd be good to get the public hearing scheduled tonight if that's something the commission would be willing to endorse, for our January 9th meeting, if that's okay.
Okay. So what is the consensus then of the commission? Do you want to go with January 9th to
Sure.
have this
Yeah,
made available?
let's get it.
And how soon do we have to release the copy to the public for that meeting, Drew? Is it 10 days?
I believe so, yeah. So we could put the draft out, on the webpage, on our webpage, as soon as I make these final revisions.
Okay.
We'll just have it labeled as a draft, provide a link to it. We could do some public outreach, at least, as much as we can prior to the public meeting. It'll be advertised just like a regular hearing.
Right.
Go through public comment, and then the last step would be another hearing for publication.
Okay.
And
Great.
a question for you, Mr. Chair. So just the mechanics of the public hearing, is that something that would happen first on the agenda? Or is that something that would be after the application hearings?
We can set that agenda any way that
Okay.
I want. I mean,
Oh,
I
sure,
set
just for
agenda.
anyone who might
Yeah.
be interested to come and issue
That's
public
something I
comment.
think we would take right up front.
Okay. Noted.
People would come if they have concerns or
And then they
questions.
can-
Don't want them sitting around waiting for
Exactly.
discussion of somebody's white picket fence.
The
Okay. Okay, so the consensus is that we'll move on that for the 9th? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Okay. Then I'll move to Regulation 25, discussion on performance standards for Draft 6. You all have a copy of Draft 6? Did you guys get a copy of that? I know you're fairly new to this.
Did you put them in the notebook for tonight?
It was in
I
the-
didn't see, I have them electronically on my laptop. I don't know if, I know they were distributed out.
Today?
No, a few weeks
Well, that's
back.
25.
Yeah.
We got 25, we didn't get,
The most
Oh,
recent one,
72.
yeah, I'm not sure, because I saw,
It's Chapter 172, Regulation 25.
oh, is
we
that,
draft
is
six,
that, we're
yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about the same thing? Okay,
Yeah.
yes, then we
Yeah.
had, we did get those.
and then that was what you sent out the letter just today.
I
though,
just
from
sent the letter today.
Papaneset Beach.
Yep, we just received that today.
Okay, so that'll become part of the record?
Yeah, that'll be part of the record, absolutely, so, and if they have any, if there's any public comment as well, that will as well.
Okay.
So, tonight, discussion's really, I believe, performance standards?
Yes.
Yeah, so,
Yep.
so that will cover most of the bases tonight.
Yeah, I've included like a, it didn't change the wording, but it's just, to include the comments and discussion, kind of summary of discussion at the last meeting. Some of the comments that I wrote in, to version 6, but I didn't change any of the language, it was just including the comments, that were discussed at the last meeting.
Right.
Do you know the date of that meeting? Drew, was I here? I can't remember what the date was.
It was our second meeting in November, which was 20,
Was it when I was in the hospital?
Yeah.
Was that the 14th?
14.
14th, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's, I wasn't here for that one.
yeah. So we only had a limited number of commissioners present for that discussion, so I just wanted to document what was discussed, and some of the comments made on some of the standards, which, Paul, I sent that to you, and Sandy, just to highlight what was discussed, by various members at that meeting.
Yeah, I've got that electronically on my screen.
Okay, good.
So I'll take any comments or questions that commissioners have on what we have so far, if you have any.
I have a few.
Sure, Sarah.
Comments. Should I go first? So this was the first time I'd seen, I guess, the expanded draft of Regulation 25, so not just the performance standards.
Yep.
I did have a couple of comments specific to the performance standards and then some others on the rest of the text to the regulations. So what would be the most helpful to start with?
Let's look at the standards first.
You got it? Okay.
Yep.
And I'll try to move this along. I don't know what folks are here for public comment on, but, so performance standard number 6, I know that there was an existing comment for, so the as-written performance standard 6 says for activities proposed in A zones, the historic rate of relative sea level rise in Massachusetts of 1 foot per 100 years must be incorporated into the project design and construction. I had made a previous comment, I think, about rather than using the historic rate of sea level rise, since it's more of an exponential climb than it is a linear rate from what we've observed, that we want to use the projected rate of sea level rise as the reference point. And so in terms of citations for that, there are a couple that I have to share, and I can send these links to the bylaw review subcommittee. The Coastal Zone Management Office has some data sets that inform their flood depth projections and flooding coastal storm surge projections for 2050 and 2070. I would recommend we use the 2070 recommendations. There's also some data and some language on sea level rise in the 5th National Climate Assessment, which is a federal document that applies to the whole nation, but in particular, there's a chapter on coastal impacts of climate change, and I can send that citation to you both. But that would be my existing comment for performance standard number 6.
Okay, great.
Yep, don't look behind us, let's look ahead, please.
Makes sense.
So for performance standard number 7, I think that this specifically needs to state that all houses built within the flood zones where moderate to high wave action is observed and or projected need to be restricted to pilings. And that the foundation walls that are solid without the flood fence need to be prohibited. There's a lot of comments in here already about our purview, state building codes, all of these things. I think in terms of what we're doing to protect the resource area and specifically the channelization of floodwaters coming in, that should be the focus, I think, of our efforts. And then any legal ramifications or inconsistencies with the state building code will be picked up by town council. That is their job, to make sure that we're not putting out regulations that we can't enforce. But I think it's pretty readily defensible given the resources available from the Cape Cod Commission and Office of Coastal Zone Management regarding the impact of solid vertical walls, including foundation walls on channelizing floodwaters and the flood zones. And again, I think any conflicts with the state or local building standards can be addressed with the support of legal counsel who is qualified to offer these comments. Our regulations are strictly to protect the resource areas, and that's within our purview to do. So that was my comment for number 7.
Can I ask just a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
Sure.
Having listened to a lot of the meetings online, in the event that there is a conflict between building code and this body, who is the authority?
State building code is what legal counsel has come back and said. Yep.
Councils and codes with building
Yeah.
code.
Yeah. We've also got a building code expert on the commission as well who's informed us that these regulations are changing or they're already in place. So there's 2 versions right now that this is relevant to. So there's some really good comments in there.
Did you want to comment on that, Steve?
Yeah, because some of these regulations are going against building code. So
Right.
I don't think some of these things should be in our regulations.
The existing ones or what we're proposing?
It's proposed, yeah, because
Yeah.
some of these things are, are covered by the building code that, we don't have any oversight on or purview on.
Sure.
So why should they be in our regulation if we have no control over
Okay,
it?
so which
Right.
performance standard are you looking at?
Number
7.
2, definitely. Limited buildings, additions, sheds, pools, retaining walls, fences, garages. Some of those things are, landscape features and things like that. So that, to me, doesn't make sense, and that's what we talked about before. The same, permitted existing building footprint. So nobody can build an addition. So basically you're saying, it's a tear down or you go up. You can't put an addition, even though a town zoning code says you can put an addition on, the building code says you can put an addition on. We're telling a homeowner you can't put an addition on your property, so we're limiting property rights right there. So we ought to be consistent with the building code and the zoning regulations there. And then going down to number 5, does that meet current Board of Health regulations? I don't know if it does. That was a question I had on that one. And then number 7, like Sarah said, is...
Before you go to
Yeah,
7,
7,
on 5, are you talking Mashpee Board of Health, or are you talking State Board of Health,
Or both.
or both?
Both, yeah. Yeah, does that... just if we're going to say that, our no increase in flow and then the percolation rate, okay, does that match up with state and local regulations from health department?
Okay. Got it.
And then number 7, talking about coastal A-zone buildings, to me, that's all building code. There's a whole new building code coming in that addresses coastal. And this is what Shauna was asking me earlier, the letter from Dave Morris on the building code based on 425 Monomoskoye. The current 9th edition in the IRC 2015 covers coastal A-zone, but the Massachusetts amendment does not cover A-zones. The new 10th edition in the IRC 2021, which is in effect now, but there's a concurrency period which ends June 30th, addresses coastal A zone. So to me, that's a building code issue.
I mean, you could, in writing this as a performance standard, you could have a light item that says everything must conform to existing building codes, Mashpee.
Yeah, and approved by the Mashpee
and
Building
also
Department, yeah.
And reference that, the Board of Health and things like that too, and that's your catch-all to ensure that all those things, are there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you build, in the conservation, requirements on top of those.
Right, yeah, because it's the responsibility of the building commissioner to enforce the building code, so it's, yeah, there.
There should be a mechanism to move in lockstep with the other local boards and commissions, though. And I think if we're making recommendations based on area impacts to the resource and projected impacts to climate change that are purely rooted in conservation, I do think it's within our purview to include some of these things. I mean, for performance standard number 2, for example, the Cape Cod Commission in their model bylaw actually recommends no new development in the floodplain as a mechanism to retain the critical characteristics of the floodplain to prevent storm damage and help with flood control. So I don't think that in including it in our regulation, we're violating state building codes. I think we're just following step with the other experts who are noting that increasing development, if we continue to build on the water, we're going to further degrade the ability of the floodplain to protect the entire community.
Right,
in the
but
event
some
of
of
what we're seeing.
Yeah, some of these things are, I mean, you can't tell somebody they can't put a fence on their property. That's a landscape feature. That's not a structure. That's, so some
Sure,
of
we
those.
can. It's for legal counsel to determine what we can enact and what we can't. I look at this as we're making recommendations based on the information that we have. And there are similar tools available that have similar language to restrict these features
Well,
because of the impact to the resource
Yeah,
area.
then the other thing too is we got to look at what is Mass DEP's new regulations coming out.
When are they
too.
coming out?
Should be
So
soon.
they they're saying early 2025, but we don't know whether it's coming. So
Yeah.
what are they saying? What are their draft regulations? So to get
Whatever
close to
they
that.
do say, this is a local bylaw, so,
Right.
we certainly can't have anything less stringent than what the DEP has, but we certainly can look at the local environment and say, the state's not doing enough to protect the resources for the town of Mashpee, so we enact a local bylaw, which is a little stronger. So I'm not all that concerned about what the state is going to enact if and when they do, because there's nothing in here that's more stringent than what was in those draft regulations that we had the luxury of seeing when we started to put all this
Yeah.
together.
Who's our liaison, Mr. Chairman, with the state?
The state?
For the state.
There's a South Coast
I'm
DEP
curious
office.
because way back, February, March, we were counting on seeing their draft by September and October at the latest.
Right.
And now we're going into the new year and we don't have anything?
Yeah, they got an overwhelming amount of public comment, and the way they work is they have to respond to each one. So when they release the draft, they have to also release their response to public comment. So they're putting all that together, and no one has any idea what's gonna be in it yet.
That
No one
is
knows. As
crazy.
of 2023 in November, I think it was released. So they said early 2025, January hopefully sometime, but
Jeez.
you know as much as I do.
So,
The way it goes on.
I just got a couple more. So under number 7,
Yeah, for
that,
building code materials?
last paragraph, it's just say, we just got to match up with the building code for that one, for the coastal A about vertical walls. And then number 8A, existing roads, paving existing roads. So if you're going to have a storm and lose Jeep Place or one of those roads in Papaneset down on the water, you need to put that road back as paved or existing condition, because it's a town-maintained road.
I'm just looking at, that's velocity zone.
Yeah, 8. Yeah, velocity zone.
No, it says also within AO zones are likely to have
Yeah,
adverse
AO
effect.
zones, yep, you're right.
Okay.
You know, paving or placement of brick or concrete block for new or existing roads, well, driveways, pathways, well, parking lots are prohibited. So I could see driveways, pathways, parking lots, they're all, I think those are all pervious, basically, what we have in our, what we've been approving.
So you're saying take out existing?
Well, I would put in paving and replacement of existing public roads should be
Yeah.
there. And then all other, all other areas be pervious, so you're not lumping a town road into a private, because there are town roads in the velocity zones and AO zones. So I'd just separate the two.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
I still had a couple more comments as well.
Coming back to you.
Yeah, I still had a couple more.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Regulation, or performance standard 12. There seems to be a disagreement, just looking at the comments about the buffer zone, and I just want to reiterate, I don't agree that we should strike any reference to a buffer zone at this time because of the current state standards not including it, which is, again, what we addressed through Home Rule Authority, or because of the enforcement capacity, which is really not for us to figure out. If that's what the resource needs, we've heard the town say that they will find a way to meet it. Coastal resiliency zones are useful alternatives to the buffer zones, but until we have those established and mapped, I do not agree with removing the buffer zone to the floodplain, as the intent is to retain the same function of the floodplain, just like the coastal resiliency zones. So I think until we're ready to replace the buffer zones with coastal resiliency zones, we've done the work, we have the data, it's in. I think we need to leave the buffer zones in because functionally they serve a very similar purpose. And that's to allow for areas of migration, of course, due to coastline shifts, sea level rise, and to provide a buffer for adverse impacts to the resource, as we have with all the other resource areas in our regulations.
Let me ask
So-
you a question, Sarah.
Sure.
Because you've spent quite a bit of time with the guide booklet from CZM, and I know there's a lot of talk in there about coastal resiliency areas. Is there any reference to GIS mapping layers for coastal resiliency areas?
Not that I haven't read all 300 pages of it yet, so not what I've seen.
You haven't come across that?
No, but I did speak to Rebecca Haney over at CZM, and I also spoke to, I think, oh my goodness, her name's escaping me, but she's a wetland scientist with our regional office for DEP, just about this as well. And they do have the data. I think it's just finding the resources to get the data down Mashpee specific, and there's a lot of ground truthing that has to happen. So again, a lot of these data layers, like we're talking about with the FEMA firm maps, they're engineering data, and they're not all current. So you've got to go and see like what shifts have happened, based on development or based on natural changes to the coastline in order to map those zones. So that would be a really intensive process for us to get good, actionable, meaningful coastal resiliency zones in place.
Because I know we talked earlier about replacing a buffer zone for a floodplain
It's
with a
an
coastal
awesome idea.
resiliency zone.
It's an
or
awesome
layer.
idea, but I just don't think we're ready to do it yet and remove the buffer zone
Leave it in
from the
until we're done.
regulation.
So
Exactly.
we have that data, yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. We've got to find the time to do that.
Keep an eye on that if you would.
Sure.
'cause that'd be
happy to.
helpful if that does come about.
Yep.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you, so go ahead.
Oh, I think, no problem. Some of these are just, formatting, so maybe I can save those for later. I do think that performance standard 14, we say in performance standard 1, I think it's duplicative. We could probably look to remove that. And then performance standard 16, it feels like the regulatory version of all of their duties as assigned. It says the commission can impose additional requirements as necessary to protect the wetland values. And I'm concerned that would be defensible, so I wanted to propose that we maybe instead note that the regulation would be reviewed and updated according to the resource condition and available data at a recurring time frame, maybe every 5 years, just to make sure we're tracking with what's actually happening, rather than saying we can impose any regulation necessary without any further
Okay.
jurisdiction. And then I think performance standard 17, I don't think that needs to be stated. I think we can remove that as well.
Yeah, that's all been struck anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And those are all the comments I had on the performance standard. As I mentioned, I did have a couple just on the language, particularly around climate change and sea level rise and some of the formatting things. So let me know if it's better to email that over or go through it. I know we've got folks waiting for public comments. So.
My intent tonight is to hear from commissioners, and then I'll certainly go out to
I
the
see.
public. But I want to hear from you guys first.
Sure.
So, you're good?
That's good on the performance standards. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on performance standards?
13. Can
13.
somebody just give me this seems to be a really big lift for this commission and potentially Dan and Drew. So what was the intent of this performance standard? I mean, to me, it sounds like if I decide I need to do Roundup to get rid of the invasive weeds in my driveway, I have to come and ask for a.
You do. It's.
Right.
And is that really?
If you're in a jurisdictional area, yeah, those chemicals can have pretty adverse impacts to wetland vegetation is key to everything. So
Can we, do we have a mechanism to enforce this and police it and?
Policing it is impossible.
Right.
Don't you think? I mean.
Policing it would be kind of like the fertilizer, where we'd have to prove that they are doing it and that it is what we're saying it is, which is vastly difficult, vastly difficult. So for enforcement for this, it would be something where we would have to actually see them physically doing it, see a contractor doing it perhaps even. If it came to a contractor, it's a little different because a homeowner, when it comes to herbicide, they can spray it on their property without a permit. Well, without a license, I mean, they would have to get a permit if they are in jurisdiction for conservation.
Mind you, I'm very supportive of this, but I also have
You're
my
being
policy
practical.
background says you don't write law that you can't enforce.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Because it's bad practice.
Right. On the other hand, when an applicant comes before us and with the intent of going after invasive species, but with the use of herbicides, the intent with this is to have language in place so that we can deal with that applicant and regulate exactly what they're going to do, how much they're going to. So it's not a question of going out in the neighborhood and finding somebody that's doing it. It's a question of having some language on the table that everybody is aware of, so that when projects come that involve this, and we do have several of them, that we have the language to support.
You have something to back it up.
Okay.
But I do understand what you're saying. We've had that discussion many times. I mean, here's half the enforcement right here, the other half is on the screen,
Right.
and
And you guys don't seem like you've sitting around doing your nails and eating bonbons.
No, we do not.
they're a little
No.
busy.
Enforcement is just one aspect of the job, you know, so.
Okay, I get it.
Okay? Anything else?
Are we going to take any more votes this evening?
I don't believe so. Hold on.
I want to leave if we've got something that we've
There's
got to
nothing
vote
there.
on, but
There's nothing there.
I got to get out of here
No,
fairly.
there's nothing else that we're going to be voting on tonight.
What's that?
There's nothing else. All we're going to do is
Okay,
finish
good.
our discussions and our updates.
It's so great to see.
Other than adjournment, we'll be voting
Other
on
than
that.
adjourn- yeah.
Yeah.
Fading fast, I just want
So,
to.
you know, if you need to go, certainly,
That's okay?
yeah, we have a quorum. We're good.
Okay, great.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marjorie.
Is somebody talking to me?
Yeah, I said thank you.
Oh,
You're feeling better. We don't want to
I feel
push.
very welcomed back.
You're feeling better. We don't want to push our luck.
Yeah, I know. It was so great. Marjorie came back to one meeting and then she died. It was, I don't know.
Don't say that.
Don't say that, Marjorie.
Okay.
Thank you all, guys.
Anything else from commissioners? We're set with that? I'll go out to the public. If there's any public comment on draft 6, this would be the time.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Tim Kilday.
Yep.
I'm a homeowner in Mashpee, and I work with the Papaneset Beach Association homeowners. I'm on the board of directors. You'll recall we had contracted with Beals and Thomas to look at the language for proposed Rule 25. Back in September of this year, September 2024, we provided their findings, their report to this commission. And we were surprised. On version 6, none of those recommendations were incorporated into the version 6. Nevertheless, we asked them to look at version 6 as well and provide the comments. And we contract with this group. They have tremendous amount of subject matter expertise in environmental planning and wetlands, science, et cetera. And we provided that today. We respectfully request that you give those documents serious consideration. We think it will add value to the rulemaking process that you're going through.
Okay.
Secondly, pertaining to the DEP regulations that are, we understand as well, are imminent, that they're going to be put out, as well as their responses to the comments. I understand one perspective that was stated, that it is irrelevant to your process. We think it's important. There'd be a lot of useful information that would also help guide you in your rulemaking process. And we request that you delay finalizing the Rule 25 until DEP's information is available to you to help in that process. On behalf of all our homeowners, we have 583 homeowners that are part of our organization. We thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
When was draft 6? What was the date on that? Wasn't that May? And
I don't know if I can get that off this document or not.
I don't know, but that was my birthday, September 24th.
I don't have the date on draft 6. I believe
I was in
draft
that hospital on my birthday.
6. No, the first draft that was released public was at the quarterly meeting in May. I think it was May 4th.
yeah.
And then after that, draft 5 and 6 were, because they were released to the commission, they become public documents that are available to anyone. Draft 6, Sandy, you're on the subcommittee with me as well. I think we've been working on that one now for a couple of months.
Yep.
At least,
Yeah.
because we
At
don't meet
least.
that often. And
Yeah.
Alex, I think Alex is no longer interested in being on the subcommittee. Although I don't have an official resignation from her, but,
No, I think she said that, though, you're right.
yeah.
So it was draft 6 before the Beals and Thomas report got issued, or after?
September.
It was actually after the Beals and Thomas, and it was after our November 7th quarterly meeting, where we had the last discussion on, or the initial discussion on version 6.
Right.
So that it was, so it was after the November 7th quarterly.
And if I wasn't clear, we've asked them to comment on version 6, and that was provided to the commission today.
Okay,
So there's 2.
all right. Yeah, I was just trying to get the timelines there, so. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, this version, this discussion is just to review comments. It's the same version as the previous version 6. There's been no change to the wording. It's just a listing of comments.
Right.
Oh, okay. So that was the one from back in the summertime.
It's the same version as 6. I called it 6.1 just to kind of note that it's a listing of the comments that were discussed at our last meeting.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
You have the
Great.
floor.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Malloy, co-chair of the Pompanesett Working Group. I know we've chatted about this regulation a few times. In addition to the Beals and Thomas comments, there continues to be significant confusion around the draft Regulation 25 and what it says. And that's feedback that I've got from many people in the community. So one of the things that we had requested a while back was we asked for a meeting so we could discuss some of this. There is a lot of confusion out there. And quite frankly, some of that is I had a conversation with Drew the other day, and we didn't know what some, like Provision 6 actually says and what it means. So I would ask that you take a look at the regulation and think about how these things are worded, and can people really understand what they say. Performance standard number 2, in our opinion, should provide some flexibility for homeowners by incorporating different performance standards for the different flood zones. And that's a comment we've made before. It's actually allowed, Mass DEP did that, Cape Cod Commission did that. You know, there's a big difference between a velocity zone and a MIWA A zone. And what we've seen certainly in these other documents is a different set of performance standards. And version 6 does not do that. It just basically prevents just about everything. But we would ask you to take that into consideration. Performance 6, standard 6 was mentioned earlier. But I think the reality is no one quite knows what that regulation or what that number 6 means. How do you interpret it? You know, I understand that you're supposed to look at, or Sarah, you had suggested looking to 2070 for sea level rise, but what does that actually mean? How does that translate into, what does it mean to buildings? The new version 10 of the building code, which I read the appropriate parts, you know, increases some of the heights and distances between flood elevations and foundations and things. So my understanding is certainly version 10 attempted to do some of what I think you're hoping to do. But as drafted, number 6 is not clear, and it's a bit of a head scratcher as to what it actually means. The other one I'd comment on is just something that was discussed a few minutes ago. We're not quite sure what the purpose is of adding a coastal resiliency zone. The new draft says nothing about its goals, its purpose, its intent. Certainly without this zone, draft regulation 25 impacted about 2,000 homes in Mashpee. To the extent it's incorporated, you know, we don't really know, is it hundreds or thousands of other homes? I don't know, but it's a major impact. So we'd love to better understand what the thinking is behind a coastal resiliency zone. I understand a buffer zone concept, but the definition was added, but really nothing else in the regulation to address how it would be used or interpreted or what have you. You know, I know we've said some of this before, but PBA believes it's critical that Reg 25 provide homeowners with a path to raise and replace their homes or make reasonable additions or modifications to those homes where raise and replace is not feasible. Reg 25 must allow homeowners to age in place and not force longtime homeowners out of their homes. We need to encourage creativity and smart redevelopment of properties. Neighborhoods like Pompanesett are fully built out. There needs to be an appropriate balance between this regulation and homeowners' needs so that we can get the desired environmental improvements that we're all seeking. If no one improves anything, we're going to get nothing. So there's the balance to me really comes with how do you encourage people to do the right thing without making it so prohibitive that they just don't do anything at all, because then we all lose. Thank you.
Thank you.
John?
Oh, one other comment. Steve, you mentioned roads. Were you differentiating between public roads and private roads? Because in a place like Pompanesett, all the roads are private. They don't meet the town's requirements.
Well, if it's a publicly maintained road, right, the town.
We maintain them
You
too.
maintain, you plow them too? The town doesn't
The
plow?
town will plow one strip for the school bus, but we do maintain the roads. And
Okay,
we
yeah, I
rebuild them
just
and
want to
things.
differentiate between public and private roads, yeah. Yeah, because, you know, there could be a public road down Secaucet Island that's in a flood zone. So that would cover Secaucet. It might not cover Pompanesett. Because
Yeah,
they're
so-
private roads, so there
so-
should be, if there's a, you know, a private road, should be differentiated in a neighborhood versus just a private, dirt road or a shell road or whatever, you know, to
Agreed,
go
yeah.
to the house, so.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that Pompanesett is able to maintain their roads.
Yeah, it should say, you know,
Yeah.
private neighborhood roads, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be
to
good.
clarify it, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? We're all set? Okay, so I guess we can move on. The next discussion item is tribal co-management. It's a focus group discussion.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk about co-management, cultural respect easements in town on conservation property. So I took the initiative and met with the tribe to discuss with them about pathways and possibilities for that. So we had, the chairman and I had a nice discussion about it. And we didn't really pass around ideas as much as we did about planning. Because this is something that is not going to come from two people planning it out. It's going to come from a group of people on each side planning it out. So all aspects are, you know, are collected, all considerations are given, and there is no chance of missing any opportunity, whether it be from a private person here in town or whether it be from the tribe wanting something or wanting to enact a policy or whatever it may be for co-management. So in light of that, what we ended it on is that we would like to make a focus group, having part of that from the Conservation Commission. You know, can't be any more than a quorum, so 2 or 3 people. And then the tribe themselves, they would have a selector, however they want to select, they would have members part of the focus group as well. So that's what we're at right now. I'm not saying we need to pick representation tonight. I just want to get it in all of your heads so that it can be discussed further. I would hope probably in January, if not February, so that we can start organizing some focus group meetings sometime in the spring. And then we can go into the summer with more of an idea of what we want or what is needed or what is the best pathway. So the main thing that came about this is that when I have been reviewing cultural respect easements, when I have been reviewing co-management, when I have been reviewing a whole bunch of things to do with tribal law and to tribal land, I didn't find that cultural respect easements for all conservation properties in town was 100% appropriate for the town. One, the tribe has, they have access to not just town properties, but properties as their, what do they call it, sustenance rights within the state.
Rights.
Yes, Aboriginal rights, there we go. Just lost for the word. So they already have those in the state, and in the town, they already have rights as well to do things on town property, state property that no one else can do in the state. A lot of it is related to hunting. So because of that, I felt that co-management was a much more appropriate measure for our purposes here, but also for the tribe's purposes. One, obviously money always comes into big question. All right, if you're talking about co-management, you're going to be talking about money at some point. And this is an opportunity where we can actually co-manage and not have to have swapping of money or even things of that nature. Because the tribe has capacity when it comes to members to assist, and the town has capacity when it comes to organizing and getting things facilitated. So we have those capacities. The town needs more assistance because we have an extremely large amount of conservation land and an extremely large amount of trails. So anything we can do that can help us maintain these properties, that's not costing us money, that's also at the same time building a community good and building relationships within the community, I think is something we should be doing. And the other aspect is the tribe should have, they should have onus, they should have a part of these properties. You know, I don't need to get into the background of that on why, I think it's very clear. Way back when, before any of us, they had access and they had onus to them. And that's the bottom line. So because of that, they should be having access. Also because they are stewards of the land, and the holistic ways in which they operate and the holistic ways in which they can recommend things to be done are something that I feel this town needs to be taking far more advantage of. And I think that having a co-collaboration with them on managing of these properties can pursue those goals greater, not just for property management, but also for restoration, also for working together in town on multiple projects, whether it be restoration, whether it be farming, whether it be roads or whatnot. So I think that's something that we should take advantage of. So I wanted to get that in your heads tonight. There will be needing 2 to 3 members for a focus group that the commission's gonna have to discuss on
Okay.
how they wanna organize that. So,
Sounds great.
yeah, and then anything in that focus group, I would just hope I can be involved just to facilitate the scheduling, facilitate that also with whatever agreement or whatever is going to come legally from it, to make sure that's all sound and set before not just our town council, but also the tribe's council. Because that's that's the sovereign government of the tribe as well as the town that has to have legal agreements in this. It can't just be something we just shake hands on. So it has to be binding so it can be strong.
Great. Okay. Any comments from the public?
Good evening, everyone. Brian Whedon, 133 Main Street. I'm also the chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. So the tribe would be proposing to have 3 or 4 members of the tribe, such as 1 representative from the Natural Resource Department, 1 representative from the Natural Resource Commission, along with Chief Swift Eagle Earl Chiefy Mills and myself, chairman or designee. I also want to note that coming off of the 2024 White House Tribal Nation Summit, which was held this past Monday at the Department of Interior in our nation's capital, it was shared that the Biden-Harris administration has approved over 400 co-stewardship, co-management agreements under the leadership of Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland, who is the first Native American cabinet secretary and is a member of the Pueblo of Laguna tribe of New Mexico. I also wanted to note that DCR established a new position of Indigenous Peoples Partnership Coordinator, who is going to serve as the Department of Conservation and Recreation's new liaison to tribal governments, with a mandate to help DCR build relationships with tribal nations and forge connections between DCR land management, traditional ecological knowledge, and tribal culture. The appointee is Leah Hopkins, a member of the Narragansett Indian Tribe of Charlestown, Rhode Island, who most recently worked at the Heffenreffer Museum of Anthropology at Brown University. Leah Hopkins was also here last month with Governor Healy when she visited the tribe's reservation, and we look forward to working with her and the Commonwealth as we address our collective needs in the town. I also want to note that the tribe is also working on establishing a small working group to work on the same initiatives with the National Seashore around co-management and co-stewardship. And also, if there's any questions, I can answer if there's anyone that you have for the tribe.
Great. So I guess my question would be, do we have a target date where we could have this focus group from both sides look at to begin? Rather than just say, I want you to think about it. We've been talking quite a bit about this. I'd like to see a subcommittee from this commission come forward at our next meeting.
Okay.
And then I don't know what the time frame is for the tribe, but we should try to focus on a first date to begin, just so we all have that target, and it doesn't, we don't get bogged down with something else and it ends up being in the background. So did you have something in mind, Brian, as in terms of a time frame?
I think at this point in time, the tribe can identify the members, and once you all identify who would be on that, I can have a representative come to the next meeting when you all appoint it, so that you all know who would be on there from the tribe. Assuming it might be the natural resource director like Jason Stiding, but it could also be Dale Oakley, the assistant director.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure at this point in time. And then Vernon Pocknett, or Buddy Pocknett, is the chair of the Natural Resource Commission, but I don't know if he would be involved or somebody else from the commission, so that's probably how it would go.
Okay. So let's target January 9th.
All right, so we'll target for January 9th. I will be in communication to see if we can lock down a hard date, so we have a more idea on January 9th. But January 9th, we'll put it on the agenda for discussion. The commission will decide who then, and then we will decide for a date from there, and hopefully you can have a representation here on January 9th.
Okay, thank you. I also want to acknowledge Dan for all the work that he's done. He did say that this is a priority for him. That's at the top of his list of things to do on his desk and his duties. And it was nice of him to come to the tribe and meet with us and build those relationships. So definitely good to have the relationship and improve that relationship between, you know, the tribe and the town, and look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for all the work that you do, because it wasn't too long ago I was sitting in your seats. So.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chairman.
Brian. Okay. So I would suggest for commissioners, if you're at all interested, to just shoot Dan an email.
Yes, please do.
You're going to head this up.
Please do. If you're interested, send me an email. If we get 3, then it's 3, and if we get more than that, then we'll further the discussion from there.
Yep. Okay, great. Updates. Is there anything on here that needs our specific attention? Because it is getting late.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I just wanted to update the commission on that list of updates. Upper Quadrant restoration. So I would like to, I'm working with Horsley Witten Group and APCC on identifying key stakeholders for the Upper Quadrant restoration, where we left off with conceptual plans. So they're going to assemble a list of stakeholders, and I'd like to identify a future meeting date, you know, to host a public interaction forum to get feedback on where we're at with the current conceptual level plans, and get the ball rolling on that initiative. Now that Chop Shake is in the construction phase, we have more time to take up Upper Quadrant now, and with the additional funding from NOAA, which is substantial, it's in the millions, we can expand that project, but we want to, you know, review where we're at currently with key stakeholders, and look at possible expansion of that restoration scope. So just wanted to update the commission on that. And speaking of Chop Shake, as I said, construction has begun, so the back box cell that's more landward from the shoreline of the pond has been excavated out. If anyone has the opportunity to go out there and check it out, it's really amazing work that's taking place with Sumco, the contractor we hired for restoring these bogs to wetlands. I would advise, if you're going to go out there, wear muck boots, because it is muddy, especially with the recent rains, if you can't avoid walking in muddy areas to access the bog. So, but I do encourage, if anyone has time, or if you want to go out on a scheduled trip with staff, we'd be happy to do that. It's certainly worth checking out how a bioengineering project works from start to finish. So very excited to finally see this project breaking ground. It's been 2.5 years of planning and permitting, conceptual design. So it's wonderful to see this actually happening, and we should expect to have substantial completion by the end of January. And come spring, you'll start to see the wetland characteristics take hold, and you won't even recognize that the area once had a bog, a cranberry bog. So very exciting, and recommend that commissioners get out and check it out. I think there's some other pressing updates, but if anyone has any questions on the list of updates, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Is there anything there from commissioners? We're good. I'm just mindful of the time. Short meetings always aren't short. I don't have anything under communication or additional topics, so if there is a motion to adjourn, I would
So
accept
moved.
that. Thank you, Steve.
Second?
Thank you, Sandy. Roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.